jungle.
Hello, you are listening to Trump Republic Radio. It is January 21st, 2018. I'm your host, Enzo K. Sada, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Bobby Hester.
Hello, everyone.
Bobby, if you're going to describe the news that we're going to go through this week, what would you describe it as?
Busy.
Very busy.
This has been probably one of the busiest, if not the busiest weeks of the Trump presidency yet.
This, in my opinion, has been the busiest day in months. Bar none.
Easily. Especially since the last couple of weeks, not much was going on because of recesses and the new year and all that sort of stuff. It all came back and it hit the ground rolling.
But a lot of things that we've been following for quite a while now, especially negotiations, has really come to effect this week. And we can see that in the government shutdowns.
Yes.
Or as we, call them, the Schumer shutdown.
Hashtag Schumer shutdown. Get that trending.
So, Bobby, do you want to tell us how this all happened? How did we get into a government shutdown?
Well, in order to tell the full story, you have to actually go back a week or so.
Yeah.
A couple weeks maybe. And that went with the DACA negotiations because the left was only wanting essentially amnesty for not only the 700,000 DACA kids, quote unquote, but also some sort of amnesty or other bills for illegal immigrants in the 11 million range to 20 million range that's normally estimated, even though it's probably likely higher than that. But these negotiations were going on. Trump was meeting with people, and essentially that's when the shithole countries remark came out.
Yes.
Because what Trump was doing was he knew that he wasn't going to give up anything for amnesty. He was going to make sure that they meet on his terms, not him meet on theirs. That's why you had the 70-point immigration plan. But he met with some Democratic members of Congress. And those were the ones who were like the Democrat hardliners on immigration. Whereas if you notice, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they didn't want to get involved with those discussions.
You had, the likes of Graham and Flake and Dick Durbin at the meeting. So
Yeah.
This was kind of like the show meeting that Trump put on to say, I tried something on DACA, but
Right.
the bill that they gave him was garbage.
Yeah.
So it would have been essentially the DREAM Act, which is not just 800,000 DACA recipients.
It's all 11 million.
It's about 3.2 million individuals.
So maybe not all 11 million.
But then it also gives them the ability to sponsor their siblings through chain migration. The bill refused to give up anything on chain migration. And the visa lottery that it said it was getting rid of, it was taking those visas and giving it to countries like Haiti and El Salvador and Africa.
Right.
So, this isn't something that we want to give up. And all we are going to get is like border security funding, not
Right.
even wall funding explicitly. Just a border wall, not a border wall, but border funding security package of only like $5-6 billion. So like, you shouldn't give up on this stuff. You have to get chain migration. It's pointless to give it up. So that bill obviously failed.
Right.
It went nowhere. And that was the last straw for the DACA recipients. Chuck Schumer and Pelosi's strategy was, well, if you're not going to give us in time for the shutdown, we're just shutting it down. So when the continuing resolution to keep the government, running, went through the House, but it went to the Senate vote, and it went 54 the continuing resolution, 49 against, and one not voting. The one not voting was McCain because he's out
in the
with
hospital,
injury.
wherever he is.
But to pass an appropriations bill, which is essentially any sort of monetary bill through the Senate, it needs 60 votes. Now, we could go nuclear, but we didn't even have enough votes. You need 51 to do that.
Right.
There were both Democrats that voted for the continuing resolution and Republicans that voted against the continuing resolution. Bobby, do you want to go into some of those?
Yeah, so first I'll go with the Democrats that voted for it. And those were, let me see if I got the right here. The Democrats in the Senate that voted for it were Joe Donnelly of Indiana, Heidi Heitkamp of North Dakota, Doug Jones of Alabama, Joe Manchin of West Virginia, and Claire McCaskill of Missouri. Now, all of those are from states that Trump won with very big margins.
Yes.
And all of them, with the exception of Doug Jones, are up for re-election here in 2018.
Yes.
And so they know that if they want to try to win as a Democrat in a deeply Republican state that Trump won by huge margins, you gotta, try to cover yourself here. And that's what they were doing with this bill. They didn't want to get blamed for the government shutdown or saying you voted against chip funding or anything else.
And this
that
goes
this was put in.
to, it counteracts a narrative that the left has been pushing really hard for this year, and that is the idea of the blue wave.
Right.
Because if there was a blue wave, wouldn't they be supporting Democrats right now in their position? They're not.
Exactly.
They are at great risk in a lot of places throughout the country. 4 Democrats are at great risk, but they don't talk about this risk at all.
No, and there's a CNN poll that was done actually. A CNN poll, which tends to be more left-leaning, that's true. A CNN poll was done about amnesty and the government shutdown, and they found out that 56% of people said that approving a budget was to avoid a shutdown was more important than continuing DACA, whereas only 34% of people chose keep DACA and get the shutdown. So,
and I believe a slight majority of Democrats want to avoid the shutdown over closing it for an amnesty.
Well, Democrats actually broke in favor of DACA, 49 to 42. 49% said DACA is more important. 42% said avoiding a shutdown is more important.
So a slight lean towards DACA.
Slight lean towards DACA, but even then, it's not even a majority of Democrats that favor DACA.
Yeah.
It's a very slim plurality.
Yes.
Whereas for Republicans, 75% is shut down compared to, I don't even know what the number was for DACA, probably very few. Independents, 57%
for
government shutdown, avoid that before keeping DACA. So it's very unpopular amongst the American citizens all across the board of choosing DACA over shutdown. But what we got was shutdown. And no DACA.
So I want you now to go into the Republicans that voted against the government shutdown. Do you know that?
In the Senate, there were, I believe, 3. Is that correct?
There was 5. I can go over them.
Okay, if you can go over them real quick.
So these are the Republican senators that voted against the continuing resolution. Senator Lindsey Graham from South Carolina, Senator Rand Paul from Kentucky, Senator Jeff Flake from Arizona, Senator Mike Lee from Utah, and Senator Mitch McConnell from Kentucky. And then, as we stated before, John McCain was unable to vote.
Right. And before we actually start discussing this group of people, let's get one thing perfectly clear. Guys like Mike Lee and Rand Paul, which were the 2 you listed there, have completely different reasons for voting against this thing than the other ones do.
Now, with Flake and Graham, it's pretty transparent that they voted because they still want the amnesty tied to the, continuing resolution.
Right.
That's the asset that the Democrats want negotiated on any sort of continuing resolution heading forward, which is not related to, the function of an appropriations bill. This is something that they're just adding on, saying the government shut down until you give us amnesty. Mm-hmm. But yeah, as you said, then you have Paul and Mike Lee that voted against the continuing resolution because they just want an actual budget passed.
More fiscally
instead
conservative.
Of doing another continuing resolution which pushes the bucket down, a couple months later.
Right. And Trump actually had a tweet about that too.
Yeah.
Trump, I don't have it up in front of me, but Trump actually had a tweet, I believe it was this morning, where he said, how about instead of trying to get the 60 vote thing, go nuclear, keep the 51 vote majority to actually pass a thing, but pass an actual budget. Don't pass a continuing resolution. And I believe that even if you had the same people voting the same ways, you're still going to have some of those Democrats in Republican states that will vote for a budget over a potential another shutdown or continuing the shutdown even further. So right then and there, you've got over 51. And if you actually go for an actual budget rather than a continuing resolution, you'll probably have guys like Rand Paul and Mike Lee flip back to the yes column, as long as it's, somewhat decent. So it's very possible that, It's very possible you can avoid a shutdown, pass an actual budget with the people that we have in Congress right now without having to worry about anything else if you move to the nuclear option and decide to do it with 51 votes.
And there's a couple of Democrats that, are still very close at risk for this coming up midterms that might be swayed to vote for the continuing resolution at this point. I mean, you still have Sherrod Brown in Ohio, which Ohio went very easily
Trump
for
won
Trump.
Ohio by 9%.
And you also have Debbie Stabenow in Michigan, which that is also another state that went to Donald Trump.
Although very narrowly.
Not
Much narrower than Ohio.
Ohio was a lot easier. But these places are still leaning more red when you look at voting registration for parties.
Yeah, we haven't even talked about voter registration numbers here on the show for a couple months, but they only keep getting better for our side.
Yeah, it is one of the big benefits that we have right now. So it's interesting to see where we're heading now, because as it looks like right now, we're just going to stay in a government shutdown for a while.
Right, and I also want to touch on that real quick, because the way all this stuff is set up and whatnot, if you don't pass another continuing resolution or a budget, I believe they said by Sunday night or early Monday morning, so it's essentially tonight when we're recording this. If they don't get this thing passed within now, it's probably going to last for a week, maybe 2 weeks. It could continue for potentially indefinitely for all we know. I would personally love to see this thing last for like 6 weeks, maybe a couple months. I want this thing to just continue, personally.
Yeah, because the longer this goes, the more apparent it will become to everyone that this is a fight, shutting the government down over amnesty. And that just doesn't pull well. So I want to leave that to the Democrats to give up on something. If we're going to give up anything on DACA, we need a better bill for us.
Right.
Which goes into the thing with Purdue and Cotton that you wanted to talk about.
Meadows and Cotton.
Meadows and Cotton.
Yeah. Representative Mark Meadows and is it Representative or Senator Tom Cotton? I keep forgetting.
He's a senator.
Yeah, so Representative Mark Meadows from North Carolina and Senator Tom Cotton from Arkansas. Both of them are essentially like really, really good on immigration. They're the hardliners that we have right now that are leading the way. Like Tom Cotton, I believe, was the one who actually introduced the RAISE Act. I'm pretty sure. Or it might have been Mark Meadows. One of these two guys.
Cotton did.
Right. Them and Steve King from Iowa. Those are like the three guys that we have that are very, very good on immigration. However, and remember, Mark Meadows is actually the chairman of the House Freedom Caucus. So that's the thing that, you got your more like quote-unquote libertarian type guys, but that means he's got sway over a lot of people in the House when it comes to some of these bills. The point that I'm getting to is there's a report out, according to CNN reporter Deidre Walsh. They said that Trump has actually entrusted himself with Mark Meadows and Tom Cotton. He said, no matter what passes or doesn't pass in the House or Senate, I will not vote for any sort of immigration bill if it doesn't have the approval of both Mark Meadows and Tom Cotton.
Which you can trust these guys.
And these are guys that you can trust. Like, these are the guys that, they're holding everyone else's feet to the fire right now.
Like, if you look at Numbers USA, which is the best place for polling on how senators and representatives vote on immigration, these guys both have A's.
I think they have A+.
I believe
pretty sure.
Both do.
And,
at least A's, though.
Yeah, I was going to say, and I've been trying to go through the whole... the whole database that we have with people and for the midterm election episodes that we're doing.
Yes.
And it's surprising just how many people are Republicans that don't have higher than A's. But I personally, if anyone has an A+, I'm going to hope that person wins re-election, even if they've done some other things I don't like. Because to me right now, immigration is the most important issue. And so
it's what shut down the government.
And when I've been going through these lists, you see, I've been checking every single person's policies on immigration just to see what they are. If they're just mainstream Republican, then I tend not to write it down unless it's they specifically mention things like the wall or more border patrol, cutting immigration, limiting it, cutting chain migration, not wanting amnesty, that sort of stuff. So I personally want those people. But the point that I kind of wanted to get back to when we were talking about this is just how immigration actually is affected by the government shutdown. And there's a good article here. I believe you posted this. So if you want to bring it up, we can go through that real quick, because that's actually pretty important once we get to the immigration segment here later in the show.
So what you need to keep in mind, that with the government shutdown is most of DHS will still be there. So the Border Patrol will still run under a government shutdown, as well as ICE is also working through a government
That
shutdown.
means deportations will continue.
Uh, the U.S. Citizens and Immigration Services, USCIS, the agency that processes immigration paperwork, will hardly be impacted at all. So as far as like applying for immigration status, you're still going to be able to do that. As far as like visa and passport processing, the State Department will continue to process visas and consulates will stay open, but their operations may see a slowdown in certain buildings that are affected by the government stoppage. As far as immigration courts are concerned, the majority of immigration courts are still open through the government shutdown. Uh, yeah, that's about how immigration would be affected by the government shutdown.
Yeah, so there's some good stuff in there. ICE continues, Border Patrol continues, but at the same time, the I guess you could say the legal pathways to citizenship aren't really as affected as you'd think that they might be.
yeah. Um, as far as what is shut down during the government shutdown, it's all non-essential services of the government. So stuff like the national parks and like monuments and museums, those are shutting down during the government shutdown.
And even then, that's not entirely accurate because there are some national parks and monuments that are completely unaffected. And this is kind of the next topic that I wanted to get to here. Just talking about so far what we've seen, the difference between the Trump administration and the Obama administration in how they are handling their government shutdowns. So specifically, I want to talk about the World War II Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
If you remember back to 2013, October 2013, when we had the government shutdown under President Obama, they famously put up barriers, closed the whole monument. There were groups of veterans that were coming from all across the country that wanted to visit the monument or memorial, and they weren't able to get in. People were told not to go. National parks were shut down, blah, blah, blah. Fast forward to right now with the Trump administration, they're keeping that stuff open. They're keeping open the World War II Memorial. They're keeping open a lot of the national parks. In fact, both Yellowstone National Park and Grand Canyon National Park both tweeted today saying we are fully open and operational despite the government shutdown. And those are two of the most visited national parks that we have in the country. So it seems that the Trump administration is handling this a lot better. Also, at the World War II Memorial, our Secretary of the Interior, Secretary Ryan Zink, he personally went to the World War II Memorial this morning, and was handing out maps to people and greeting visitors. Compare that to the Obama administration, which set up barricades and told people you can't come here.
Yeah.
Instead, we got our head guy out there shaking hands, giving out maps, and greeting people to the exact same memorial that was closed 4 years ago.
Yeah, so
3 years ago.
Trump's shutdown is not as harsh as prior shutdowns, and I think that's what we can see through most things. But two areas that are still harsh, affected by the shutdown I do want to get into is chip in the military.
Right.
So potentially we could see 9 million children lose their health insurance under children's insurance, health insurance funding, otherwise known as CHIP. So they tried to put this in the continuing resolution independent of the DACA, and they still said no. So at this point, the Democrats are voting against CHIP passing, and they're always, the ones saying that, oh, we need to help the children, we need to give people health care, but they're preventing children who, CHIP is through Medicaid. It's like a branch of it. It's its own separate program, but it still works in the same sense. You look at how this breaks down per state, just saying Chuck Schumer alone in New York, potentially 684,000 children will lose CHIP because Schumer wants to shut down the government for DACA kids. So it's prioritizing foreign-born, individuals over American-born children. And they say that they have a moral high ground on this. So, yeah, the government shutdown is bad in that way, and hopefully it doesn't last too long for that reason.
Yeah.
As far as how this is going to affect the military, more than 2 million members of our military will not be paid until the shutdown ends. Now,
That's
when the
kind of fake news a little
when the
bit.
shutdown ends, they'll get the money,
Yeah.
but you can't pay out during the shutdown.
You can pay out a little bit. It's very complicated and odd, and it's very easy to get misinformation here. You're right. They still get paid for their work. They won't receive their paychecks on time, that is. They still receive some paychecks, but they're like delayed until the government shutdown then ends, then all the paychecks are able to go out. So it's not like they're getting $0 to the potential to where, like, a lot of people could just have $0 coming in if this thing lasts for 2 months. They want to make sure people don't get to that point. So
Yeah.
they will get paid, but it is delayed and all that other sort of stuff. So it's very complicated, but you just want to make sure that, like, these people are getting paid. So yeah, in that regard, it is good that if the government shutdown doesn't last very long, which is hilarious because I still kind of want the thing to last for a while, unfortunately.
I want it to last as long as the Democrats will fight for this amnesty.
And if that's all the way to 2020, then so be it.
As far as also how this affects the military, 100,000 National Guardsmen will be sent home from training. Pilot training will be stopped, and trainings will be canceled for tens of thousands of reservists. So
Right.
it lowers our military preparedness quite a lot by being in shutdown. But I don't know. It isn't our fault as Republicans that support the president at all for the shutdown. We try to be good. We've said what we will give for a DACA. You know, did you hear Schumer complain about how, like, oh, Mr. Trump, I put the wall actually reluctantly on the line for
Yeah,
a
I saw
DACA
that.
save? It's just like the wall isn't the most important thing that we put out there. It's chain migration, and you know it.
And the Democrats are actually starting to shift their tone. Like before, any talk of wall at all, they would not do it at all. Nowadays, they've actually started to shift their tone. It was Representative Gutierrez from Illinois. I believe it's one of the guys that was the, like, I'm leading this, like, vote for impeachment for Trump type of guy. Pretty sure it was the same dude. He was being interviewed about the government shutdown, and he even said, fine, you want the wall, we'll give you the wall. You tell us how high you want it. You tell us how long we want it. Just don't touch the dreamers. And that's what he said. So you're seeing like a leading Democrat who's got some notoriety in the party for being a guy who, is like leading quote unquote impeachment. That's the same guy who's saying, fine, you want the wall, we'll give you the wall. Just give us what we want too.
Yeah.
And so, like, they've already conceded in the wall. We're getting the wall. Like, we're going to talk about the wall here later in immigration. The wall's happening. It's the other stuff they're focusing on. So, if, coming back to the whole point here, if it's trade wall for amnesty, that's not a good deal.
That's a
We
terrible
don't
deal.
take it.
You don't
It's
need
the
to.
other stuff, like you said, like chain migration.
And visa lottery.
Visa lottery, stuff like that. That's what we have to go after. We've already got the wall. That's in our court. We don't need to negotiate. In fact, I'd be okay with even taking the wall off of negotiation tables right now.
We can fund the wall by other means. Do not worry about the wall when we're doing this. You need to worry about the chain migration. If we give the DACA recipients, even if we say it's the 800,000, which we got some stuff later, it's going to be more. What they want is a clean DREAM Act,
Right.
which is 3.2 million. But say it's just the 800,000 get to stay. They still, if we keep chain migration in how it stands today, get to sponsor all of their relatives to come over. And, you look at the DACA program, it's about 80-85% Mexican nationals. Mexican nationals, on average, sponsor about 5 immigrants to each immigrant.
So you can easily do the math there.
So, yeah, that 800,000 will turn into millions. But as we said, the DACA, they want to go for the DREAM Act, which is already 3 million. You'll be bringing in potentially 10 million people over the course of just a couple years.
I mean, there's a poll that, or not really poll, there's a report study that was done. I'm not sure if
and
we
they'll
still
all
have-
be legal.
Yeah.
They'll qualify for
Yeah,
all
and I was going
government
to say,
programs.
there's a thing I think we cut it out. They said that legal immigration alone over the next 50 years will bring in 100 million new people into the
I
United
believe we
States.
still have that.
We might still
down
have it. If
the
so,
line.
we'll just, we'll get to it when we get to it. 100 million legal new immigrants to the U.S. over the next 50 years. Everything will be blue if that happens.
So yeah, this is why we can't compromise on the shutdown. We're protecting ourselves from being damaged by a really bad immigration bill. And hey, this is all over amnesty. We're fighting amnesty, and the thing is like this doesn't have to stop the shutdown. We
No.
can work on DACA afterwards. You can get a continuing resolution going, and then we continue to work on DACA. They are putting their line in the sand saying the government shut down until you give us this.
And the longer it goes on, they're going to start having more town halls. Because remember, this is an election year, okay?
Yes.
The Texas primaries are less than 2 months away at this point. Other primaries begin afterwards and afterwards. Illinois is 2 weeks after Texas.
Yeah.
So that's like about 2 months from now. Primary season is starting everywhere right now. And every single person who's a Republican running against a Democrat in like a Democrat district that's even close is going to be changing their campaign website and shifting their tone and focus on their Twitter accounts and saying, my opponent shut down the government, vote for me instead.
Yeah.
Which is what needs to happen. If you're somehow listening to this, if you're working on anyone's campaign or have contact with any Republicans that are running in blue districts that are close and have the potential of winning, you need to be shifting your tone and focus, blaming this entire thing solely on the Democrats. Don't cuck. Put the blame where the blame begins. You want to win. This is how you do it. Just wanted to get that out there. And there's one last thing, at least I wanted to say about this. We didn't, even though the continuing resolution passed in the House, we still had some Republicans voting against it.
Oh, you want to go over who?
Yeah, I've
voted
got the
against
list
in
here.
House.
It wasn't very many. It was only like 10 or 12 people, but it's very important to read this. We got, and these are all in the House, remember? So,
Yes.
Amash from Michigan, Biggs in Oklahoma, Curbelo, Florida, Getz, Florida, Gosar, Arizona, Hollingsworth, Indiana, Jones in Kansas, Massel in Kentucky, Mooney and West from Virginia, Ross and Lettinen from Florida, and Whitman from Virginia. Okay? So, with the exception of Getz from Florida, because he's going to be what we're going to talk about in the next segment here, all those people, you need to really watch out if you're living in one of those states and you live in one of their districts. Watch out for them, because some of them, like Justin Amash, he tends to be more like the whole libertarian angle as well. But just look up as to why those people voted against it. If they're not like House Freedom Caucus type guys, start questioning it right now, because we want to make sure that we don't have any more Jeff Flake types and Lindsey Graham types that are in the House. We might be able to identify some of them right now.
Yeah.
So just, if you want to re-listen to that part once we're done, you can look it up. But those are the Republicans in the House that voted against the continuing resolution. Just want to make sure everyone knew that.
So, yeah, we're in government shutdown. This is something that we predicted, Bobby, was going to happen for weeks now.
Right.
We never thought the negotiations on DACA were going to go anywhere other than the shutdown. But we're fine on it because, hey, the ball's in the Democrats' court and they're in a hard spot because we don't need to compromise.
No.
So, with that, do you want to go into some release the memo stuff?
Yeah, let's release that memo, Enzo.
So, as we said, this is a very busy week, and the government shutdown was the biggest item, but this is potentially one of the biggest stories that could be happening this year if things were released in earnest, God honest truth,
Right.
And that is this memo in regards to the FISA warrants that were, done under the Obama administration to get the wiretaps on the Trump campaign. Do you want to go into that for us, Bobby?
Yeah, so the House Intelligence Committee on Thursday approved a motion by New York Representative Pete King to release the memo on the abuses of FISA to all House members. Now, as of right now, from what people have said, there have only been one Democrat in Congress that has actually read the memo. And there's been about 200, I believe so, Republicans that have said that they've read the memo. And of those, every single person that's read the memo and has actually had public comments is essentially just like, oh my God, this is incredible.
Do you have any of those
I do.
tweets?
So Representative Jim Jordan from Ohio, who we've seen him talk,
Yes.
he said, it's so alarming the American people have to see this. North Carolina Representative Mark Meadows said, it's troubling, it's shocking. Part of me wishes that I didn't read it because I don't want to believe that those kinds of things could be happening in this country that I call home and love so much. Florida Representative Matt Getz was on Fox News, and he said, Yeah, he said that he believes that people could lose their jobs and go to jail once this thing is released. Let's see. We also have, um, yeah, Matt Getz went on to say, I believe the consequences of its release will be major changes in people currently working at the FBI and at the DOJ. And Representative Scott Perry from Pennsylvania said, you think about, is this happening in America or is this KGB? That's how alarming it is. So you got multiple Republicans and stuff that have done all these different things.
And this isn't like
I have to go into where this thing came from.
Yeah.
This is a 4-page memo. This isn't an official document, okay? This is essentially one guy. It was done by House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes from California. He's the one that put this thing together. He's been working on it since December, all right? He's done his own research and he's put it together. This thing's classified as top secret right now, or whatever those classifications.
it's like a best of memo.
It
of,
is,
like, the stuff
and
he's found.
nobody has released this thing publicly because at the rate that things are getting leaked right now in the government, if someone had this thing, they would have leaked it already. And I think it's WikiLeaks actually said that they are putting up, or they're willing to match up to $1 million worth of donations to whoever really is able to leak this thing to WikiLeaks. And they're all paying in Bitcoin too, and they got a Bitcoin address that they tweeted out so that people can donate. And whatever gets donated, up to $1 million, they will match and they'll give it to whoever leaks that thing. So, I mean, I personally don't think...
So that person could potentially get $2 billion in Bitcoin. Million.
Yeah,
not billion.
potentially up to $2 million, plus whatever else is donated from just regular individuals.
Yes.
Because if it's $1.5 million, they'll match up to the first million. You might get $3 million for all we know.
Yeah.
Depending on how many people. I mean, if I had enough Bitcoin that I was willing to donate, I would totally donate to that as well. I do believe, however, that we will get this thing soon.
Yes.
There are some insider sources.
Well, they're in the process of releasing it now.
Yeah, I mean...
the House Intel Committee has officially begun the process to #release the memo. And this, you can get the Representative Dave Joyce said, great news, our effort to release the memo has been effective, and the HPSIC plans to begin the process to release the FBI FISA/Russia memo. This may take up to 19 plus congressional workdays, but Americans deserve to know the truth. And that's from his official Twitter.
Yeah.
So we're releasing it.
Yeah.
But it's going to take a while for us to know.
Yeah, I was going to say, there are some insider sources I follow that have said that it for sure will be released within the next 18 days. However, I don't want to exactly say that in case it doesn't happen. But, I mean, I guess we should probably go more into some of the other stuff that's in the memo, or supposedly is in the memo.
Well, supposedly what's in the memo is something, it's kind of what we've been talking about for months really now.
Yeah.
And that is the whole FBI collusion,
The Russia narrative.
to set up the Russia narrative. So this goes back to the 2016, about the summer of 2016, would you say, Bobby?
Yeah.
The FBI gets these search warrants through the Steele dossier as, justification to get the FISA warrants on the Trump campaign to monitor all of their communications to see if they even talk to a single person that's Russian, which is not illegal to talk to people that are Russian.
And this kind of goes back to the whole Trump saying, like, Trump Tower was wiretapped. His campaign was wiretapped. We
and
know
even
that.
back then, when he said that back in March, I believe it was now, that, Obama wiretapped me, he said that that's Watergate level stuff. Trump knew the stuff on the memo all the way back then. And now you're getting a lot of these representatives saying this is bigger than Watergate now. This is something that's been in the works for a long time. Yeah, but, we've talked about with, Andrew McCabe and, was it Lisa Page?
Yes.
And who is the other guy in the FBI that Lisa Page was cheating on?
Peter Strzok.
Peter Strzok, yes. The three of them, you get it through the communications between Strzok and Lisa there. These are the anti-Trump texts that, we talked about, I believe it's 2 or 3 weeks ago now.
Yeah.
Where they said that we need to stop Trump by whatever means necessary, and what was necessary was get the wiretaps on the Trump campaign so they could watch him, which they got through the Steele dossier, which is financed by Fusion GPS. which
which was financed by the Clinton campaign as well.
Yeah.
And the DNC.
And also the Never Trumpers like Bill Kristol.
Yeah, they all funneled this stuff together.
And the Steele dossier was given to John McCain, who leaked that to, the American Central Intelligence Committee to, look into the Trump campaign.
Yeah, it all comes full circle. So that's essentially what is in the actual memo we're trying to get released right now is the confirmation of
at least that's what we think it could be.
That's what we believe. However,
it could be anything.
If you look at the quotes that some of those people that have read it, and they've all said, yeah, this thing confirms what we know, and it's even much worse.
There's definitely stuff that we don't know about at all that's going to be in there.
Yeah, and one of the things that people believe it does is it confirms that Representative Adam Schiff from California was leaking stuff to the press. And it's interesting because ever since the whole release the memo stuff started getting trending, he's been so quiet. Now, this is a guy that he would never, ever, ever pass up an opportunity to put his face out there and open his mouth to be anti-Trump. He's been dead quiet since then. Okay, so it's possible that he knows because, even though Republicans and Democrats in Congress don't really like each other, they still work with each other, they're still around each other, they still talk. And it's very, very possible that not only did some Republican read it, possibly tell him what's in it, or just be like, hey, dude, heads up, I read this thing, it's not good for you. They're freaking out right now a lot.
Yeah.
And if it's that much worse and it confirms what we know, it's very possible that what Representative Getz said from Florida, that, yeah, this could end up with people getting arrested and thrown in jail for it. I hope it does.
Now, I don't think this memo has smoking gun to Barack Obama.
Right, I don't think either. Or Hillary Clinton.
I don't think that you needed direct command from Barack Obama to get these people to move in lockstep to do what they wanted to do anyways. These are independently acting agents that all have a common interest that also happens to coincide with what Barack Obama would want.
Right.
But, when this gets released, it's going to hopefully be the biggest stuff ever. Now, the media has downplayed the hell out of this. They even said with all the activity for the hashtag on Twitter that that's Russian bots doing that.
Yeah, and that's the problem is every single time something happens where it trends on our side, they just automatically blame Russia. I mean, did you see Twitter send out those emails to people about Russia?
Yes.
Okay, now, most of you that are listening probably have a Twitter account, probably received the same email. But Twitter essentially was sending out emails to every single person who either liked a tweet, retweeted a tweet, or is following somebody who they deem as being a Russian bot, according to their things, over the course of the last year and a half. So they sent out this mass email to essentially everybody on Twitter, especially everyone that's relatively right-wing. And it's hilarious because, number one, these things aren't Russian accounts. Number two, who cares if they were? But they're going that far to scare you into being like, oh, you're part of this whole Russia thing. It's your fault. You were the ones that got this thing trending. Which is kind of true, because it was regular everyday people that actually got hashtag release the memo trending on Twitter. It got to the #1 trending worldwide topic.
It was an organic.
It was organic.
Hashtag.
I saw, it wasn't just your
not
obvious
AstroTurf.
It wasn't your obvious right-wing troll accounts that you see on Twitter that was tweeting it out. It was your average normie tier type people, your average even boomers that have Twitters even were the ones that were out there and that were retweeting it, tweeting about it, talking about it, and just realizing, wait a minute, this is what we've been waiting for. So it is an organic movement. It did come about by itself, and it has a lot of backing to it. The fact that it's at the exact same time as the government shutdown, God, this does not look good for Democrats at all right now.
No.
Especially if you're one of the ones who you think might actually be implicated in the memo.
Yeah, these two things could tank their midterms for them, and they understand that.
And I hope it does.
They're just playing with fire right now. They're trying to do the best they can, but this really could backfire them on them in a grand stance, because there will most likely be Democrats implicated in the memo.
Yeah.
So we'll have to see where that goes. But anything else in the memo you want to talk about before we go on?
No, the last thing I just wanted to say about the whole memo is it will be released. I
And
think something that
also we need to mention a lot of people believe the Mueller probe will end when the memo is released.
right. A lot of people are thinking that Rod Rosenstein, who's pretty much like second in charge of the or not of the DOJ right now, he's the
Sessions.
deputy attorney general.
But he's the guy in charge of the Russian investigations.
Right.
Him, and he's got Mueller under him.
But Mueller's the one that's like spearheading the whole thing.
Yes.
Whereas, so a lot of people think that it's possible that Rod Rosenstein might get fired over this. I'm not sure. I don't know. I hope personally it does. But yeah, that's really all I have to say on the memo right now.
Yeah. Let's move on now to the stuff about the Trump health exams.
So Trump got a health exam earlier this week. He got it done by the White House doctor, who, by the way, was the exact same doctor that President Obama had. Dr. Ronnie Jackson. And presidents are supposed to get a physical exam about every year. Trump got his, and his health was really good. In fact, the doctor there, Dr. Ronnie Jackson, he even said, yeah, Trump has good genes. But Trump himself requested a cognitive exam. This goes back to, over the last couple of weeks, everyone started, or the Democrats and the left kind of shifted their focus to be all like, Trump's mentally unfit for office. He's insane. He's crazy. He's deranged. He's a dotard. Trump himself requested a cognitive exam be done. He scored a perfect 30 out of 30 on the thing. Okay, you and I wouldn't be able to score a 30 out of 30 on that thing.
Probably not.
And this kind of goes back to what we've been saying about, the fact that he has an estimated IQ to be over 150. He's a very intelligent man. He's when they say like, oh, he's 2 steps ahead of everyone, a lot of times he is. He's able to think of things and work through his brain in ways that we can't even comprehend.
Yeah, when you have an IQ of something of that high, around the 150s, the process is mentally firing in a mind. If you try to explain it to someone of an average intelligence, it won't make sense.
Right.
So, that's kind of like the crazy genius level of Trump that we've always seen. There's parts of him that just seem stupid, but really it turns out to be a big play on his part to do something, masterminding in a sense, which, I wouldn't have it any other way, really.
Yeah, and there's some other things that came out of the whole physical examination. We did find out he is 6'3". So remember when there was the whole discussion back during the primaries about is Trump 6'2" or 6'3"? His driver's license said he was 6'2", but he always said he was 6'3", and people thought he was lying to make himself sound taller. Well, they got his height. He's officially 6'3", so that, again, Trump was right. Weighs 239 pounds, which, yeah, we know that Trump is slightly overweight. Like, that's kind of an obvious thing. You just look at the guy, you know that. It's not into the, like, morbidly obese, you're going to die of diabetes type overweightness.
Yeah.
However, Dr. Jackson did discuss a diet plan with Trump that includes smaller carbohydrates and fats. And they said a reasonable goal for Trump is to lose about 10 to 15 pounds over the next year. And Trump himself even acknowledged that he'd be healthier if he lost a few pounds. So, President Trump, you need to cut back on the McDonald's, dude.
Yeah,
less Diet
a little
Cokes.
bit. Too much carbohydrates.
Less Diet Cokes. Less carbohydrates.
carbohydrates.
And I think it was Melania Trump herself actually said that she was going to be kind of like monitoring Trump's dietary needs. So if the worst thing about Trump right now is that he needs to lose 10 pounds over the next year, that actually sounds really good and really like reasonable to me. 10 to 15 pounds over a whole year?
That's not too bad.
That's very, very simple.
And like as a yearly goal, if that's all he really needs to be more healthy, like he's not in a bad shape.
No, he's
whatsoever.
in great shape. They said his blood pressure was at the normal levels as well as his heart rate. And here's the thing I wanted to talk about. So we found out he is on 3 medications right now. Okay, you ready?
Yes.
He's on regular aspirins, so nothing bad there. Crestor, which you know what Crestor is, right?
I do not know.
I will Google it right here because I actually thought you knew. He's on Crestor right now. He is also on Propecia, which is get this, it's to prevent male pattern hair loss.
Oh.
So, and he's on a multivitamin.
It is his real hair.
It is his real hair.
It is his real hair.
And he's on just a regular multivitamin. So essentially, the only real thing that we need to worry about him on,
I guess losing the hair.
Yeah, Crestor is actually to treat high cholesterol levels. So, It's just the fact that his cholesterol wasn't bad per se, but it was like at the high end of normal, and they just wanted to get down a little bit. So
That's a reasonable thing to do.
So he's on Crestor to lower his cholesterol. He takes a thing to prevent him from losing his wonderful golden mane of hair, and a regular multivitamin that everyone should be taking. So for all those who think, oh, Trump's on drugs, no, he's not.
Trump doesn't do drugs whatsoever.
Yeah, they said his cardiac health is normal. And when they actually told the public, they actually had Press Secretary Sarah Sanders. She was told by Trump to let Dr. Jackson answer any question that the media asked him, and he told her, don't push him off the stage no matter what. Let him answer it fully. And other than that, that's essentially it. So Trump's health exam is great right now.
He's not mentally ill.
And the left just, they can't take this stuff. They always have to make it seem bad, per se.
They're into calling him fat.
Yeah,
They
and
really
so CNN's Sanjay Gupta, the doctor there that they, quote-unquote doctor that's on CNN a lot, the correspondent, he went on CNN and he said, let's see if I can find that quote. Yeah, he said, this is math. This is based on numbers that Dr. Jackson provided. The president has heart disease. Nothing there indicates that President Trump has heart disease. In fact, the exact quote that Dr. Sanjay Gupta used to describe Trump's cardiac was the word excellent. Okay, and I accidentally closed the tab here. I'm having to reopen it. But yeah, the exact quote that I have right here is, yeah, right here. His cardiac health is excellent. That's not me speaking. That's objective data. And that's an exact quote from Dr. Jackson there. So, yeah, Sanjay Gupta and CNN prove yet again to be fake news. They're also fear-mongering and making Trump sound like he is really, really bad. So, he wrote, like most men of his age, President Donald Trump has a common form of heart disease, relatively easy to address if he increases the dose of his cholesterol-lowering medication and makes necessary lifestyle changes. Granted, yes, Trump needs to do those two things. Nothing there indicates that he has heart disease. If his cardiac condition was bad, plus the whole being overweight and needing to lower your cholesterol levels, I could understand that. But when it's nothing indicating his heart has any conditions at all, but he still needs to lower his cholesterol, nothing indicates he has heart disease. So yet again, these people get caught lying. And yeah, even Huffington Post editor-in-chief Lydia Palgreen tweeted at Sanjay Gupta and said, I'm not a doctor, but that seems like a stretch. So even Huffington Post is turning against CNN Sanjay Gupta right now. So
that's very good stuff. Do you want to go now into the last big thing of the top, and that is the fake news awards?
Yes.
We've been waiting weeks for these.
So we were waiting weeks. It got delayed by a week, and even up until the day of it, people were calling the White House asking, hey, where's the fake news awards? When is this going to be? But we released it.
And this crashed the GOP website.
It crashed the GOP website. I was even one of the, I got the notifications on my phone whenever Trump tweets. I immediately went to it and it was already down.
Wow.
So, that thing crashed fast. And it didn't get DDoSed or anything. It was just a regular, it pretty much is a DDoS, but just it was normal traffic and not, you know what I mean. Too much, it shut it down. But I'll list out the things here that were in the top 10. So I'm not sure if this is which way this is. So okay, here we go. It's the top 10, and we'll just read them off right here. Number 10, New York Times report that the Trump administration had hidden a climate change study. Number 9, CNN report that former FBI Director James Comey would dispute President Trump's claim he was told he was not under investigation.
I remember when this happened, Comey didn't dispute it at all.
Number 8, Newsweek's report that the Polish First Lady did not shake Trump's hand, and yet there were pictures of her shaking Trump's hand.
Yes.
Number 7, CNN's retracted report claiming Anthony Scaramucci had Russia ties. Okay. And that got retracted. Number 6, CNN's video suggesting Trump overfed the fish during his visit with Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
That was a good one.
That was with the koi fish. That was a hilarious
Because
one.
Shinzo Abe is the one that did it first
He
and
did it
told Trump
first.
just to do it.
Number 5, the Washington Post's Dave Weigel tweeting that Trump's December rally in Pensacola, Florida wasn't packed with supporters. Because the picture he tweeted was like 2 hours before the thing started, showing people just entering, meaning, not very many people there.
I remember watching that one live. I'd say there was about at least 14,000 live
They
there.
had a packed event. Whatever.
It was a lot of people.
Yeah, it was the normal size of a normal Trump rally, so it was good. Number 4, Time report that Trump removed a bust of Martin Luther King Jr. from the Oval Office. This
Didn't
was like
happen.
day one when Trump got in there.
Yeah.
And they didn't remove it from the Oval Office. He moved it from one area to another area.
In the same room.
And because it wasn't in the same spot, they said, "Oh my God, he took it away." Meanwhile, Trump tweets out a picture and says, "Hey, by the way, it's over here now, not over here. You stupid people." Number 3, CNN falsely reporting the Trump campaign had early access to hacked documents from WikiLeaks, when in reality, they had got the dates wrong in those. And the information that Donald Trump Jr. talked about having from WikiLeaks was days after it was first published on WikiLeaks.
Yeah, when it was available.
Not
everywhere.
days before. Because that was when they had, I think it was like June 7th or 17th, but they forgot the 1, so it looked like it said 7th. So it's like a week prior. That's what that whole story went to.
Yeah.
And number 2, ABC's Brian Ross bungled report on former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn. So this was the one that caused the stock market to go down 200-something points and caused a lot of people to lose a bunch of money.
Yes.
And Trump called him out, and I believe he got fired or
I think he got suspended.
Suspended, yeah. And I'm not sure if he's still suspended or not, because that was only a
And I don't
month or
watch
so
that
ago.
stuff. So. And
And the number 1 story that we have is...
I think it's a good one.
It is definitely a good one. And actually, it goes back into the next story that we have up here. We're kind of going to do a little segue here. Number 1, New York Times, Paul Krugman claiming the markets would never recover from a Trump presidency.
So yeah, Paul Krugman, if you don't know him, he has a Nobel Prize in economics. He has a column in the New York Times, but he's like a Keynesian economist. And when he wrote that the market would never recover from a Trump victory.
Right.
But Bobby, this is a good time to go into it. It's done a little more than just, survive Trump winning.
Oh, yeah, just a little bit more. So the Dow Jones this week, for the first time ever, hit 26,000 points.
26,000
26,000 points. The Dow Jones, since Election Day, you want to guess how much is up? I mean, you can see it right in front of you.
Yeah, just tell me.
42% since Election Day. The Dow Jones is up 42% since November 8th, 2016. It's amazing.
Yeah,
And
almost, just 8 points away from double, or half.
Yeah.
as
Now,
high.
if you remember back in December, the Dow Jones broke a record for the fastest 1,000 point increase.
Yes.
It took 23 days, I believe, to go from 24,000 points to 25,000 points. To go from 25,000 to 26,000 points took only 7. 7 trading days to
7
go up
trading
1,000
days.
points.
Which by record took 23.
Yeah. Keep in mind, the Dow Jones has been around for 121 years, and yet it took only 7 days for it to go up its most recent 1,000 points.
It's doing extremely well. And, the numbers have, since tax reform, gone up even more.
And it's like that all across the board. Like, I'm just going to read out some companies that have gone up. Amazon, and these are all since Election Day.
Yes.
Amazon, up 65%.
Wow.
Netflix, up 80%. NVIDIA, up 213%. Bank of America, up 83%. Best Buy, up 90%. So you got some really big name companies in there that, because of Trump's policies, have just almost doubled their price of their stocks.
Yeah.
because of the fact that everything is going so well, and he's putting in policies that directly benefit them.
And it's not only the big corporations that are doing well, it's small and medium-sized businesses as well.
And the S&P 500 has not declined 3% either in a single day or over a period of several days since November of 2016 as well.
So very stable.
It's extremely stable. It's the longest period of calm in history, according to Bespoke Investment Group.
Yeah.
So not only, and people are like, oh my God, this is a speculative bubble. That's the reason why it's going up.
Yeah.
It's the Trump bubble. It's all going to burst. Okay? 42% in a year seems like a lot, and it is. But at the same time, it's not like it's been up and down. It's been, we've had our bad days. We've had our bad weeks. Hell,
It's happened.
From February and March of last year, if you look at the way the thing was going up, February and March of last year, the thing was essentially flat. It went down a little bit, came up, but that was 2 months out of the entire year over this 42% rise. 2 months of the year where it essentially did nothing.
Yeah.
Imagine if it had done something in there. And now that we have tax reform and stuff, it's great. And not only that, the S&P, remember how I said that was the 3%? Here's something that's a little bit more impressive. The S&P 500 hasn't seen a 5% decline, again, over a one-day or multiple-day period, since June of 2016. That was before Trump even got the nomination at the RNC. So things are looking really, really good. And according to this guy right here, his last name is Suzuki. Dan Suzuki is a senior U.S. equity strategist at Bank of America Merrill Lynch. He said, it's an extremely impressive rally. It's pretty indicative of what you see at the end of bull markets when sentiment is in the driver's seat. So things are going really, really well with the
Very,
economy.
very good stuff from that. And that also plays into a lot of new jobs are coming to the United States as well. And the big story as far as companies was Apple this week. And Apple talked about how they are repatriating a lot of cash.
Yeah, specifically they said that they're going to be repatriating $350 billion of cash that's held overseas back to the U.S. economy over the next 5 years.
And they're doing that because of tax reform.
Yeah, because tax reform, and part of it, what Trump got exactly what he wanted was, look, instead of taxing this repatriated cash, pay a one-time fee, bring it all back, and you're good.
Yes.
It's a low fee. Apple said that they are happily willing to pay $38 billion to the federal government just to bring that $350 billion back. So it's about a 10 or 11, maybe 12% tax. If you
But
look
that's
at those numbers.
$350 billion entering the American economy because we did tax reform.
Yeah, over 5 years. That is an extremely large amount of money. Not only that, they said that they're going to be opening a new campus in the U.S., create 20,000 new jobs.
And that's just an estimate. It could go higher.
It could go higher. And they said they're also looking at hiring more people at their campus that they have in California as well, their main headquarters.
And those 20,000 jobs are high-paying jobs as well.
Yeah, they're really, really good. And they said that they're going to spend about $30 billion in capital expenditures over the next 5 years to build a new campus, as well as $10 billion in capital expenditures to invest in more U.S. data centers as well. They said they're also spending $5 billion as part of an innovation fund, which earlier this year, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, said it was only going to be $1 billion.
Yeah.
So that's gone from $1 billion to $5 billion as well. So essentially, Apple is just like, oh yeah, by the way, tax reform, it's really, really good for us.
These are the jobs that Obama said weren't coming back.
Yeah. And not only that, but in terms of the actual new headquarters they're thinking about building. Actually, I'm sorry, that's Amazon. I guess we can go to the next story.
Yeah, go to Amazon.
This kind of goes along with it. So Amazon also said that they're going to be building a second headquarters in the United States, and they've taken the list of cities down to just the top 20 final cities, and they're going to be spending, I believe it's $5 billion to build a second headquarters for them as well. Create, get this, 50,000 new jobs.
For whatever city gets it.
For whatever city gets it. Now, again, they also said that that's including more hiring at their current areas. But the bulk of that is going to be in the new city. Now, I'm not going to read off 20 cities here. However, I just want to read off a few.
Yes.
On the cities, Austin, which Austin, Texas.
I expect.
They've described Austin as being the second Silicon Valley. With the business-friendly environment that Texas has, I personally think that Austin should be the number one on that list. However, I want to go into the next city that I think probably will end up as the city, and
Yes.
that's the Washington D.C. area, because the CEO of Amazon, Jeff Bezos here, remember, he also owns the Washington Post, and he's a big liberal. And I think the type of guy like him wants to be near the action, wants to have his company near the action. That would be in the Washington, D.C. area, probably in Northern Virginia, most likely. So, like, Alexandria or, well, not, yeah, just, that the Northern Virginia area there outside D.C., I think is probably where it's going to end up happening. However, what I personally want is Austin, Texas.
Yeah.
They said they're also, some of the other cities are like Dallas is on the list. So that could be a potential other city in the U.S.
Dallas is a good place too.
Yeah, I mean, I can just read through the list here. It's Atlanta, Austin, Boston, Chicago, Columbus, Ohio, Dallas, Denver, Indianapolis, Los Angeles, Miami, Montgomery County, Maryland, which is also in the D.C. area.
Yeah.
Nashville, Newark, New Jersey, New York City, Northern Virginia, which is like the D.C. area, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, Raleigh, North Carolina, Toronto, which is interesting. I doubt they're going to do that.
States.
That would be interesting if they did in Canada, but I doubt they're going to do that. And Washington, D.C. itself. I doubt Washington, D.C. itself because there's no room for something like that. I just think that would be difficult. So I personally hope it's Austin. However, I think it's probably going to end up as being Northern Virginia.
Yeah,
and the reason I say Northern
right
Virginia over D.C. or Maryland is because as bad as that whole area is, Virginia is ever so slightly, there's more room, there's more people, and tends to be just slightly better on businesses than Maryland does, or D.C. proper does. So in that regard, I think it's probably going to get Northern Virginia again, but I want it to be Austin. Favoritism, folks.
Let's move on, lastly, to some car manufacturers.
Yeah, so this is another thing that is happening. Fiat Chrysler is going to be moving the production of their Ram vehicles from Mexico to Michigan. That's
Mexico to Michigan.
Really, yeah, that's really, really good. They said that, they said that they're mainly doing this because of both tax reform and NAFTA renegotiations. They said that the United States and Canada are actually the principal markets for their truck, and it accounts for 90% of their sales. So they said the plant that they have in Mexico is going to be repurposed for the production of other commercial vehicles that are going to be sold outside of the United States. So they're thinking, okay, if Canada and the U.S. make up 90% of our market for these trucks, why are we making it in Mexico when we couldn't be making it in the U.S., when there's a potential for NAFTA to get screwed up and them having to pay possibly higher import fees to other countries? We might as well move this thing to the United States. So that's really helping all those people in Michigan. Again, Trump's going to be able to hold a rally right in front of the freaking thing, point to it and say, look what I did for you. Look at these jobs. Look at what's going on.
And
the
plant will have been running for years at that point.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not only that, but it's not only the whole NAFTA thing, the whole tax reform thing. The CEO of Fiat Chrysler himself, where's his name here? I'm sorry, I lost his name. Anyways, the CEO of Sergio Marchionne, that's his name. He actually said in a quote, he said that it was a bad idea to even move it to Mexico in the first place.
Yeah.
So you got these guys that are actually realizing.
And he's not the only one who's thinking that
No,
now.
all these companies, it's going through their mind. When they're having meetings, they're discussing stuff like this. And we're only talking about the ones that have actually green-lighted the thing and publicly said, yeah, we're doing it.
And it's not only Apple, Amazon, these car manufacturers that are doing it. It's across the board they're thinking this.
Tons of regular companies.
We obviously can't report on every single company that's doing it right now, but
there are people on Twitter that are dedicated to every single time anything opens up.
We're seeing
about it,
tons of cash flow from abroad coming back. And it's creating a lot of jobs.
Yeah, if you want to follow someone really good who's always tweeting about like new centers that are opening up that create, 500 new jobs in the city, follow Larry Schweikert on Twitter. He's really good at tweeting that stuff out. If you really want to know how good things are, just scroll back through his Twitter feed over the last couple of weeks, couple of months, over the last year. You'll find tons and tons and tons that you probably never even heard of.
Yeah. Let's move on now to some immigration stuff, Bobby.
Open the door! Immigration!
La migra, vamos, niños!
This week in immigration.
So, this week in immigration, we got some really substantial stuff.
Very shocking.
The first stuff is we want to go into is what DHS is preparing for sanctuary cities.
Yeah. So this is, if it weren't for the government shutdown, this would definitely be my most important story of the week, even more so than release the memo.
Yes.
Because what Homeland Security is currently attempting to do is they've gone to the Department of Justice and they've asked them, they said, what can we do to start lodging criminal charges against the leaders of sanctuary cities that are refusing to cooperate with federal deportation efforts? And that was Kristen Nielsen herself, the head of the DHS, is the one who said that. Now, people have been talking about her for being like not the best about this stuff. I don't know, man. I think I've come around to her side on some. I think she's back in my like thumbs up column
She
instead of my
hasn't
thumbs
been
down.
bad lately. Which,
done really
we did fear her a bit coming in, but yeah, not too much bad to say so far.
So that's the framework of where this is beginning. And what came up next is a round of really interesting things out of the state of California. So first off, the mayor of Oakland, California, she actually said, her name is Libby Schaff. She said, I am prepared to go to jail to protect the illegal immigrants in my city. And that was right after the DHS said, yeah, we want to start charging these people with crimes.
She also said the level of fear and anxiety in this community is at unconscionable levels.
Because you've got hundreds of thousands of them in the area.
And because ICE has been talking about doing their own independent raids in California particularly.
Remember, California, as of January 1st of this year, became a sanctuary state.
Yes.
They won't cooperate with this sort of stuff. And the more they don't cooperate, the more we're saying, okay, fine, we're going to start charging you with crimes for aiding and abetting illegal immigrants in this country.
And one thing that ICE has had prepared is they want to do a lot of workplace employment raids. And there's been a lot of conflict because this week the California Attorney General said that they're going to prosecute employers who help immigration sweeps. So now is the California AG saying he will sue you for following federal law and working with federal agencies.
What he is attempting to do is nullify federal law. The Supreme Court case McCulloch versus Maryland, it was the early 1800s, established the Constitution is federal law and it supersedes state law. Okay?
It's the Supremacy Clause.
It's the Supremacy Clause of the Constitution. All right? That Supreme Court case, that establishment, there are millions and millions and millions of laws in this country that only exist because of the Supremacy Clause.
Let me read the exact quote from California State Attorney General Javier Becerra. Quote, it's important, given these numbers that are out there, to let people know more specifically today, employers, that if they voluntarily start giving up information about their employees or access to their employees in ways that contradict our new California laws, they subject themselves to actions by my office. We will prosecute those who violate the law. So, this is a state judiciary system that is in direct opposition to federal law. Mm-hmm. Which, when you have stuff like this happening, like, your next thought is, like, is a civil war going to happen?
And, we fought civil wars over that. I mean, the Civil War. It started, it really started because of the attack in Fort Sumter, but the whole political narrative behind it was the exact same thing. It was over the Supremacy Clause. It was over, can we essentially nullify federal law? And think about this, Enzo. I believe this was on Tucker Carlson's show or maybe Laura Ingram's, but they talked about this earlier this week when I was watching. They said, okay, fine. I
think it was Tucker because I do the Laura Ingram stuff more.
If it was every single state all of a sudden said, you know what, we're going to start making our own rules and we're not going to follow federal law, you don't have a country anymore at that point. You have you go back to when the United States was first created. You have 50 individual states all making up their own things, and there's no way that you can enforce anything federally at that point. Okay? At that point, you cease to become a nation. At this point, if California isn't going to be following federal laws, they're not part of the United States. We can't control them. And if we can't control them, what's the point of them even being here? Okay, we've got another California thing later on that's also important, but it really makes you wonder, would Trump have the right to go in there and arrest yeah, we're going to start bringing charges against these people. I hope we bring charges against him, too, for threatening.
Do it.
If
you are aiding and abetting illegal aliens, you're violating federal law.
And if they don't want to do this, then fine. We'll go in there. We'll start arresting them. We'll start putting in our own people, start arresting judges in there, start arresting members of their Congress, start arresting this Attorney General Javier
Becerra.
Yeah, Javier Becerra guy. Start arresting these people. I mean, I make the joke about it, but I'm almost dead serious. I really think that we should be sending in the feds to California and start occupying that state in order to actually get things done. It would make Trump look like a dictator, but at some point you have to do it. Because otherwise, it's just not going to continue.
Yeah.
Either that or forcibly kick California out of the nation.
Now, I want to go into another thing that we have out of California that's also startling, and that is starting April 1st, California, the DMV will automatically register illegal aliens to vote by court order. So I'm just going to read a little bit of this. For many years, illegal aliens received full-blown driver's license from the California Department of Motor Vehicles. All they have to do is what they do every day, which is lie. In this case, they were claiming that they were here legally or citizens. It was never vetted, challenged, or checked. Now a court order has determined that every person that gets a license in California is automatically registered to vote. Here is a quote from the attorney Morris Forbster, who represents the voting rights group that championed this. Quote, "We are very pleased with that Californians will have easier access to voting registration. We are especially satisfied that changes will be made before California's statewide and federal primary elections." So California just pretty much tipped the vote for the Democrats in California straight out, and anyone that has a driver's license will be registered to vote. And in California, they allow illegal aliens to have driver's licenses.
Right. And so even if you... And this is the problem...
So that's millions of people.
And this is the problem also with voter ID laws. Because if all a voter ID law requires is you have to show an ID to prove who you are, these people can still be illegals, be registered to vote, have IDs, and still pass a voter ID law. That's why when it comes to voter ID laws, although, yes, it's important and we need them, it goes so much further. It requires what I've kind of said before. What I really think needs to happen here is you need to have a complete, you're not going to be able to do this probably before the midterms because you're going to have primaries all year. But what you really need to do is you need to have a complete deregistration of every single person to vote. Wipe the thing clean. Have every person then come back with laws in place stating you must check the citizenship status of a person who's voting. That has to be all across the country. I literally this week re-registered to vote because of moving from one place to another. I've been registered in San Antonio the entire time. I'm finally registering here in town, which I've been living in this town for 4 years. I've always voted down there. Okay, yeah. When I re-registered, the first checkbox that you have to go is, am I an American citizen, yes or no? You check it, and then you move on. It's first things first. In California, they don't do that.
No.
They don't check your citizenship status when you register to vote now, because all you need to do is go get a driver's license and you'll automatically be registered to vote. They don't check your citizenship status when you get a driver's license. So that's another law that you need to put in place nationally, is make sure people are following those laws. And at that point, if California doesn't follow federal law, then do what I said before. Send in the freaking troops and occupy the place. Arrest these people and do what we want. Implement our policies by force if you have to in that God forbidden shithole state.
It's not our policies as in what we as Trump supporters support. This is just what federal law is.
Yeah. Even if you were, like, a person who's a constitutionalist, you would be on that side at this point.
So, yeah, things in California are very crazy as far as immigration is concerned this week. The next thing we want to go into, though, is some really good news in regards to the border walls and the border wall prototypes and how good they are.
So, military special forces based out of Florida were sent by the Border Patrol to the San Diego area to test the 8 models. They were trying to both breach and scale the 8 Border Patrol models that we have out there. They use jackhammers, saws, torches, and other tools and climbing devices. And not only that, Lorenzo, they said they were unsuccessful.
Unsuccessful.
The border wall worked.
So the narrative they always try to sell you is walls don't work. You can just get a ladder. You're gonna get a guy from Home Depot that's gonna put up the ladder to the wall and they'll get over.
Yeah. Not only that they said that the guy tried to get like a grappling hook onto the top of the really tall barrier, which is the one that's about 30 feet tall.
Which is about double what standard fences are today.
Yeah, they said that most of the stuff that they trained on was about 16 to 20 feet tall. The really tall ones are 30 feet. Anyways, they said that he tried for a while. He was only successfully able to get the grappling hook to get, up there one time.
One time.
And he tried that for a while, trying to get that
And
thing
these
to
are
hook.
commandos trained in doing that.
Yeah. And they said that the tubes atop some models repelled the climbing devices but wouldn't work in more mountainous areas because the terrain is too jagged. So even then, you might be able to get a grappling hook up in like a flat area, but if you're in like a mountainy, jagged area, good luck with that, dude. You're not going to be able to get that thing up there and successfully climb it.
Just overall, through the testing of these U.S., commandos that we sent out there, they can't do it.
Yeah.
It's way too hard for people that are trained to scale things.
So if you have professional, what do you call it?
Trained servicemen.
Yeah, professional trained servicemen whose job literally is to train in the toughest of environments, try the toughest of things.
Overcome.
Yeah, and overcome. Climb a 30-foot sheer tall wall that's got razor wire on the top and is built to not have you climb it and say, I want you to try to do this. That's what those people excel at. That's what they train every single day to do, and they still can't get over it.
So the idea that like a pregnant lady
how is
is
some
going to do this?
pregnant woman from Mexico, possibly with another little kid, or maybe some like out of shape malnourished father, how are they going to be able to climb this thing if our special forces can't do it? Here's a hint: they're not going to be able to.
It's not happening.
It works. That's why you see 99 plus effectivency of border walls.
They
Hungary's
also
wall. And 100% effectiveness for Israel's wall that they've built.
that they have on the Sinai, between them and the Sinai.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, 100% effectivency over the last year. But they also, with this testing, tried breaching the wall. They
Yeah.
couldn't do it. And they also tried digging beneath the wall, and they couldn't do it. So, yeah, the wall freaking works. We send the best that we have at them, and it doesn't, they can't do it. There's the only reason that you can be against the wall is you just want illegal immigration to continue, because it's going to do its job to a very, very big degree. Do you want to go now onto some immigration news in terms of crime studies we have this week?
Absolutely. Let's get to it.
Because we have some really good ones out this week. The first one I'll go into is the one that I have on Arizona. So there was a newly released Arizona crime data survey done this week that has really shattered a lot of liberals' key narratives on immigration. Where are the stats that I'm looking for? Do you have it, Bobby?
I actually did have it, but I deleted it. There's a couple things later down here. I'll go ahead and read it. So.
Yeah.
They found out that undocumented immigrants are at least 142% more likely to be convicted of a crime than other people from Arizona alone.
Yes.
Keep in mind, documented immigrants, or legal immigrants, account for just under 4% of Arizona's population, but they only take up 1.5% of the prison population, which they say here, it says, which again shows why it's inaccurate to lump documented and undocumented immigrants together. Undocumented immigrants account for 11.6% of first and second most serious offenses in the state. So, yeah, when they say, immigrants commit less crime than normal, for legal immigrants, in some states that's true.
In Arizona, the illegal ones are committing nearly 1.5 times as much crime as the average citizen.
Right. And so they said further, undocumented immigrants in Arizona are consistently more likely to be convicted of murder, manslaughter, armed robbery, sexual assault of a minor, sexual assault in general, DUIs and DWIs, kidnapping, and other serious crime charges. They said undocumented immigrants are 163% more likely to commit first-degree murder than U.S. citizens in the state of Arizona. So, yeah, It's amazing. They said that in terms of sample sizes, undocumented immigrants are 5% of Arizona's population, but they account for 82, or I'm sorry, they're 82% above the national average and fifth among all states. So, obviously that's going to be higher for border states, but it just shows you how bad illegal immigrant crime is in one of our states itself. And no wonder Arizona's flipping to become a blue state. You got so many of these people. Undocumented immigrants, 5% of your state. Legal immigrants, 4% of your state. So that's immigrants alone, 9% of your state.
And then you have to think about all the children that the illegal aliens are having.
And they're legal citizens.
And then those are legal citizens, which it shouldn't work that way.
And you wonder why Trump only won Arizona by 4%? It used to be a solidly Republican state. People talk about what's going to be the next state to flip. Is it going to be Texas? Is it going to be Florida?
It's going to be us guys on the border.
I personally think it's going to be Florida first, then Arizona, then Texas, and then all the other states after there.
And then it'll go.
But, I do think Texas will be last. But I'm saying, watch, Arizona's going to happen, probably not in 2020. I can see 2024 Arizona flipping if we don't get these numbers under control here.
Yeah. So the other survey I wanted to go into was in regards to kidnappings.
Yeah.
Foreigners are doing the kidnappings that Americans won't do.
Actually, can I say one more statistic here before you
Yes.
do it? They said that if undocumented immigrants committed crime nationally at the same rate as they do in Arizona using the 2016 numbers, illegal immigrants would be responsible for over 1,000 more murders, 5,200 more rapes, 8,900 more robberies, 25,300 more aggravated assaults, and 26,900 more burglaries nationally than they do already.
Which is likely what they are doing.
Yeah.
If you just extrapolate what they do in Arizona to other states where their presences are. I mean, that's a fair bar to put it
Yeah,
to.
I was going to say, the crime rate...
And these are things that don't need to be happening whatsoever.
Yeah, they don't. That's stuff that we can prevent. You can prevent 1,000 more murders a year.
Yeah. Crazy stuff. But let me go into the kidnapping stuff I was going into. So according to the Center for Immigration Studies, 42.4% of federal kidnapping convictions are against non-citizens. Non-citizens also account for 31.5% of federal drug convictions. Here's the thing, though. Non-citizens only account for 8.4% of the American population. So they're outperforming themselves by a factor of,
Almost 4 to 1?
almost 4 to 1 in kidnappings. And these people don't need to be here.
No.
So when you break down that 8.4% number, about 4.4 are legal residents. And then about 4% of that are illegal aliens that make up that number. So the number together is getting this higher number. I won't be surprised if it is more illegal aliens are contributing to that number, but even amongst us, non-citizens, this number is way too high. Why are we letting these people come in here whatsoever?
It merely makes you wonder.
We're not doing a good job with, preventing the crime from foreigners coming here, and that's a problem with legal and illegal immigration.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very surprising stuff, though.
Yeah, and, we also have a couple stories here of illegal immigrants that have actually been doing stuff, or at least one story here, and this is a video that has gone viral over the last week, and that's where there was an illegal alien who had killed 2 cops, and he's sitting there in jail. His name was Luis Enrique Monrey Bracamontes, and he was on trial for killing 2 police officers back in 2014. And he said, quote, "I wish I'd killed more of the motherfuckers," he said as he's sitting there smiling and laughing. And he goes on to say, "I will break out soon and I will kill more. Kill whoever gets in front of me. There's no need for a fucking trial."
Yeah, and these are some of the guys that, we just let wander into the country.
Yeah.
And these are the guys that sanctuary city or sanctuary state policies protect.
This is a guy that killed 2 police officers.
And he wants to kill more.
Yeah.
And he's not alone in this sentiment. And he's not the only guy that has killed police officers. So it really makes you think, what are we doing?
Yeah.
Why are we messing up so bad? It's because our politicians won't do what
And
they
these
need
people-
to do for immigration to actually benefit us.
And, we've just gone over a bunch of crime statistics from illegal and legal immigrants. And yet people like to pretend, the left likes to say, oh, these people, they don't commit crimes the same way as the U.S. They earn so much more money. They contribute so much more to the United States
They're
economy.
so much better than Americans.
Yet you look at any actual statistic and data here, and it shows that, yeah, these people are so much worse than average Americans. Why are we bringing them here at all? We shouldn't be. In fact, we should be taking the ones that are here and getting rid of them.
And this goes into the last little release of information that we want to get into your minds on this as far as foreign-born nationals not being good for this country. So according to a official joint statement issued by the Department of Justice and the DHS, 3 out of every 4, or 402, individuals convicted of international terrorism-related charges in U.S. federal courts between September 11, 2001 and December 31st, 2016 were foreign-born. So 3/4 of all people that we convict for terrorism are foreign-born.
Yeah.
People that don't need to be here. We can be the ones that choose to let them in or not, and we let them in.
Now, I love when people on the left will immediately then go and to say, yeah, but here's X-American who committed some terroristic act that was born here and stuff. It's like, yeah, you know what you're doing? You're talking about the 25%. We're talking about the 75%.
And the whole idea that, like, oh, because X does something, Y increasing doesn't matter.
Yeah.
You know, Y being foreign-born terrorism. No, it still does matter.
Yeah.
Just all the numbers matter. But the numbers that we control easier are the ones that we're letting in, which is the majority of the terrorists that we're convicting. So
Vast majority, 75%. That's a super majority
yeah,
at that point.
75% of convicted terrorists, you know, between that time period of 2001 to 2016 that I said were foreign-born. So really, really crazy stuff. Our immigration policies really screw us over. Let's go now into some predictions on the growth of legal immigration if we don't change anything, Bob.
Yeah, so earlier in the show I mentioned how immigration, now this is not illegal immigration. That would be even worse. But legal immigration alone is expected to add 100 million more people to the United States population over the next 50 years. And this was done by Deputy Political Editor Amanda House for the Center for Immigration Studies. At the Center for Immigration Studies, Director of Research Stephen Camarota as well. They were the ones who put together this this list, and they said that that's what happens if we continue on the path that we do, which means Congress doesn't implement Trump's policies that cut the levels of legal immigration per year, as well as bring in only skilled migrants, moving to a merit-based system, and possibly even having English proficiency standards as well. So if we don't continue and we let things happen the way that they're continuing to happen, then we're looking at the United States going from 320 million people with about 40 million immigrants to about 400 million people with about 100 million immigrants. Maybe 150. It's to the point where you could have a third to a quarter of the United States population is not born in the United States.
There are 435 representatives in the House. It would get to the point that there's about 1 million people per representative.
Yeah.
This is not what they intended when the founders created
Yeah, and it's
this
about
nation.
720...
That would be, and then you got the Senate, there's 100. It would be over 4 million people per senator. You're not being represented when you do this.
No, and I mean, the Senate as it is right now is probably the most undemocratic thing we have in the country in terms of the way it's out there. Like, I completely understand people from, like, California that complain. They say, oh, why does Wyoming with 500,000 people get 2 senators and California with 40 million people get 2 senators? That's the Senate.
But
Whereas
it's not
if you
our
look at,
fault
I was
that
going
you're
to say, and
flooding
if you
your
look at
states
the
with
House,
immigrants.
and if you look at the House, like, that's where the real control actually is. Right now, we've got it so the Republicans do control, you know, a vast majority of the seats. But if you start flooding this country with more people like that, you're never going to be able to have small government again.
Especially if we don't get the 2020 revisions on the census that require immigration questions like they're working on right now. So Trump is actually protecting us on that.
And I actually wanted to comment on that. So, yeah, what Trump is trying to do on the 2020 census that's not currently there is they're going to ask a question on the census thing saying, are you a citizen of this country or are you not a citizen of this country? That's going to scare a lot of those people to not even filling the forms out. But for those who do, Essentially, the way that happens is every single 10 years there's a census. Now, when they take the census and they look at the data, they then take there's 538 people in the Electoral College. 102 of that are quote unquote senators, plus, 2 from DC that they get extra. So you're looking at 538, 438, 436 divided by whatever the population of the United States is. That's how many people per representative you should have. You then take every single state, look at their populations, and divide their population by that number. That's going to give you about how many representatives you have per state. I have done this data myself. I looked at the Center for Immigration Studies website. They have a map of the entire United States, and they tell you the estimated number of illegal immigrants that live in each state. That's California, which is number 1, and Texas, which is number 2, and other states from there. Okay? All you have to do is take the population of the state, subtract, and I used the 2017 estimate, the July 1st, 2017 estimate. It's on Wikipedia. Yeah, I know, it's Wikipedia, but whatever. I did this myself earlier this week. I took the population of every single state, subtracted that estimated number of illegals from there to get the quote-unquote citizenship or legal population of that state, then divided that number by that total number of all the states by 436, and then looked at each state. California loses a representative if you do that.
Yes.
Texas, although it has a lot of illegal immigrants, actually gains one, surprisingly enough. Rhode Island loses one. Illinois loses one. Now, these are also because states have shifting populations and whatnot. But if you're talking about balance of power in the Electoral College, you start taking one away from California, one away from Illinois, one away from Rhode Island, and you start giving an extra one to, I believe if I did it right, I think it was Colorado gains one, which even though that's a blue state, it's it still shows you the difference in the balance of power. I believe it was also, if I did the situation correctly, I'm going to make a video about this and release it. I know I'm rambling right now, but you understand the point that I'm getting to, right?
Yeah.
It changes the balance of power amongst the states just by not counting these people in the census. So that does nothing but help us, and I'm glad that President Trump is doing it. There's also a study out that was done. I forget who actually did it here, but they said that there's an estimated 3.6 million dreamers in the United States. The original number that they had was about, 3.2 million was the estimated number that they had.
For dreamers?
For dreamers in the U.S.
Well, under the DREAM Act, which is the next thing we're going to get into, it would be around 3.6 million people would qualify.
Yes. So, but anyways, originally they thought there was only about 3.2 million dreamers in the U.S., but they found that it's actually 3.6. That's kind of the point that I was getting to. So these things are a lot worse than you actually think they are. And yeah, that's essentially all I wanted to say about that. So should we get into the last story for immigration here?
Yeah, let's get into the stuff on the Haitians.
Yeah. So Haitians, aka shithole country, the Haitians have now been banned from applying for visas for low-skilled work in the United States. So again, if you're going to be bringing in any immigrants at all to your country, whether that be through work visas or whatnot, you probably want the best of the best coming here. Well, Haiti already is a shithole country with some shithole people living there, and we're just trying to make sure that the people that are the low-skilled amongst them, the people we really don't want coming here, aren't coming here.
We don't have a need for.
We don't have a need for them. Now, here's the thing about this whole thing, is if you look at the data from this, I saw on Twitter they said this really only affects a few hundred people. So it's not like this is some massive policy, but I like the whole idea of it.
Yeah.
And if we can do this for a shithole country like Haiti, imagine what other shithole countries we can do it for. All of them, potentially.
Yeah.
We have the power to do this. It's not unconstitutional to do what we're doing.
It's within our power to do
We
so.
have the ultimate power to do this, and we should be doing this. So I'm glad that we're actually doing it. So, yeah, they said it's only a few people, but this is normally affecting the H-2A and the H-2B visas. So, bye-bye, Haiti. You can't sign up for those anymore.
So we don't have stuff for the 2018 elections. There wasn't really much.
I can go through and tell you the two things that we had just off the top of my head real quick. Jeb Bush has endorsed Mitt Romney for Senate in Utah, and a poll shows that majority of Americans, vast majority, do not actually want Oprah to run for president. That's all we had.
Yeah, which, Oprah running for president, that's 2020.
That was last week's news.
Yeah. So we're just going to go into the bottom of the stack stuff, and we only have a couple things. The first thing we want to go into is some California stuff, starting out with New California has declared independence.
Yes, so these were actually a group of people, and out in California. Now, when I say group of people, this is literally like state representatives and people from the state.
Like state legislators.
State legislators. And what they've done is they've essentially said that the more conservative / rural areas of California that make up not like the coastline from Los Angeles up to San Francisco, they've got maps here. They've declared quote unquote independence from the rest of the state of California. They have the power to actually send the state like the actual laws and filing forms and whatnot to get something like this to happen. Question is this constitutional? Is it legal? Well, Article 4, Section 3 of the Constitution is what West Virginia used to secede from the state of Virginia and become its own state back during the Civil War or after the Civil War. So you actually have precedents for this to happen. And legally, in terms of the United States, they could do it. There's nothing saying they can't do it. It's just whether or not California will actually let them do it. But the reason this was such big news is because, number one, you'd add a 51st state. That is, unless the quote-unquote California part of New California, the liberal coastal part, actually seceded from the United States altogether, which I think would be pretty cool for that to happen.
Yeah, that's fine.
Then let us keep your more like, your conservative areas or more rural areas, where all like, the productivity of the state actually happens, other than Silicon Valley. But yeah, that's essentially what they've done. And they've got the power to put this stuff on like the ballot and stuff. It's not necessarily the whole like California secession movement or the state of Jefferson secession movement that are like more grassroots things, trying to petition legislatures to allow them to actually get names onto a ballot. This is people in the legislature that are saying, yeah, we don't want to be a part of you anymore. We think that your policies are hurting us. We stand against them. And I also went through and I added up the vote totals for all the states that are in like the New California area. And as conservative as you think it is, Hillary Clinton actually still won those counties.
Yes.
Overall. So we're not saying that this would be a reliably Republican state. However, it's vastly more Republican. Donald Trump got 32% of the vote in the whole state of California in 2016. If I remember the data correctly, when I added up the vote totals of all those counties, I believe Clinton won it like 55 to 43 or something like that. But to go from 32% to 43%, that's a significant increase. You can add a lot more people. Now, the question is, okay, fine, you'd have to have 2 more senators, and if it's blue by that much, it's probably going to be 2 new Democrat senators. That doesn't help us. In the House, there was a law that was passed in the early 1900s that actually caps the list of people in the House, I believe, at 438 or whatever the number is there. So you can't add any more people to the House. That's why we say earlier...
There's 435 people in the House.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you for getting that. So yeah, you have to divide it by that many people, all right? That really starts to become an issue when you do things like this because you have to redistrict everything in the country in order to do that.
The thing I'd like to see is would they gain senators? Would they get 2 senators seats?
They would, yeah. The Senate can continue to add people to itself.
Those would probably actually be blue.
They would be blue, and that's what I'm saying. So it wouldn't help us in the Senate by adding 2 more blue senators. In the House, you'd probably add, I did the math, it was like 19 or something like that was the number of representatives they'd have. So you're essentially seceding a state, you're seceding a population size electorally about the size of Illinois and Pennsylvania.
Big. Very big.
And it's still going to be blue for now, which is a problem. So as much as I like the whole idea of New California...
it wouldn't be that good for us.
My biggest problem is the name New California. Every single state that is 2 words long in its title, when you look at state abbreviations, it's the first letter and first letter of the first word, first letter of the second word. New California is NC. North Carolina already has NC, and they can't have more than 2 letters in the abbreviation, so you need to change your name, folks. Call it like East California or something like that.
East California.
Call it something different. Calling something good, okay? But just don't call it New California because it kind of sounds dumb, and you can't do it. So other than that, I fully support this movement. I fully support any California secession movements or anything like this, so I hope this actually goes somewhere. And because of the fact that it's being done by legislatures, not civilians, chances are it might actually do something. If
Yeah.
anything, what it does is it creates a real schism in that California legislature to say, yeah, there are quite a lot of people here that don't want to participate in this anymore.
So
They don't want to live under the same system as government.
So I want to talk now about the system of government, or just the state in general of California, because there's two things that happen that really are very surprising that people might not know about. The first thing is California is now the poverty capital of the United States. It has surpassed Mississippi. This is according to the U.S. Census Bureau. They released it this week. 20.6% of California's populace is below the poverty level.
Sorry.
Now, going on to the second thing I want to go into, and this is in terms of inequality. We measure inequality by something called the Gini coefficient. 0 is perfect equality, where 1 is perfect inequality.
Okay.
California has now reached a Gini coefficient of 0.488, which is actually higher now than Mexico, which is 0.482%. 0.482. So California has more inequality than Mexico. It is now only behind New York in terms of highest inequality. And if California was its own independent country, it would be the 17th most unequal country in the world. It would just be behind Honduras and Guatemala.
Amazing.
So, yeah, things aren't working out very well. You know, they try to have, like, the high welfare state social democracies similar to what they have in Canada or Norway, which on the Gini coefficient, Canada is 111, while Norway is 153, so very equal societies. But really, they have extremely unequal societies, so they're more like banana republics, like Guatemala and Honduras.
Now, did you mention the immigration, how that affects their welfare forms there?
Well, obviously, because they have such high levels of immigrants, that is causing a lot of the problems.
Yeah, but did you actually read the stats here? Because I can read them for you.
Yeah, you can read the stats on that.
So, native-born people in California, 30% of them are on some forms of welfare. Immigrants, both legal and illegal, in the state of California, 55%.
55%.
So that's over half compared to 30% of native-borns. So, again, when we talk about this whole, like, oh, immigrants make America great. No, they're on welfare at higher rates than United States citizens. We're paying for these people more so than we're paying for ourselves.
And in
we spend
California,
$100 billion a year on paying for illegal immigration and all the different ways that we pay for it.
in California, they're not checking if you're illegal or not to get on these welfare benefits. And just in the same way that they're giving away driver's license that automatically register you to vote. They just see them as, oh, they're just part of society, they deserve this. But
And-
this is not stuff that they can continue to do indefinitely.
And you know what? I'm actually going to take a liberal talking point here. You know what we need to do more than anything else in Enzo? We need to protect the environment. You know how we're going to protect the environment?
How?
We're going to protect the environment by making people drive less, by taxing carbon emissions, by making sure people can't drive. Wait a minute. California just gave illegal immigrants, I mean, they've given them for a while, but they're giving them driver's licenses. They're giving them the ability to vote. Oh, they're making them sanctuary cities, which means more of them can go there, which means more
Sanctuary
driver's
state.
license. Yeah, which means more cars on the road polluting the environment. So if you truly care about the environment, I've been to California a lot, okay? That area is extremely smoggy in the Los Angeles area. It's very, very bad health conditions there. Granted, it was much worse in the 80s, and if I have to agree with liberals on anything, I have to actually say, the steps that the state of California has put in to implement in terms of reducing carbon emissions in their state has actually been pretty successful. It's kind of draconian in a way, but it has worked. I will give them that point. You want that to all go away? Start taking in 20, 30 more million illegals into your state. Okay, give them all driver's licenses. Let them all buy cars. Let them all drive. You think air pollution is bad now? Just wait until a few years from now when it's at uncontrollable levels.
When they've
You want to
taken
turn into
millions
China?
more.
You want to turn into Beijing with how bad the air pollution is there? That's what's going to happen to that state. And that's really sad to think of it because California's scenery that they have, their topography, is some of the most beautiful in this entire country.
But-
and I don't want to see that go away.
But as they continue to take more immigrants. As we said, immigrants in California, 55% are taking welfare benefits of some sort. The poverty will only increase, the inequality will only increase, as the wealth will only be concentrated in the hands of the richest few there, and a lot of those people are leaving right now. I mean, they're moving to Austin, Texas.
Which is turning our state blue
because
as well.
the taxes are way too high in California. So it really is not good situations out there.
I don't know.
But let's move on to some of this Vegas stuff now.
So we've got just a couple of updates on the Las Vegas shooting. First things first, out of Yahoo News, we have found out that the girlfriend of Stephen Paddock, the Las Vegas shooter, we found out that her fingerprints were on the ammunition that were used, in the hotel during the shooting. And she actually said that she helped him load those cartridges.
Stephen Paddock's shooting.
Yeah, Stephen Paddock's shooting. So, yeah, she admits that she actually helped him load the ammunition that he used during the attack. Now, that doesn't necessarily prove anything, although, yeah, that's really suspicious, okay? But there's no way she couldn't have known, essentially, is what I'm trying to get to. So that's the first update that we have on her. The second update that we have on her, and this one's actually kind of more important, we now have a valet receipt that was taken the day of the shooting, all right? And on that valet receipt, it shows the name Marilou Danley, which is the girlfriend's name, dropped off their car and then had the valet go and then drive it, okay? Here's why this is important. She had to, let's say that wasn't her, okay? If that wasn't her, that person had to have been, number one, female. Because if you're talking names and it's like a guy and you say, oh, my name's Marilou Danley here, that's not going to work, okay? Number two, they would have had to have known the hotel room as well. Because you have to have a name that's on the hotel room and the hotel room number. They have to check the two off, and then they will drop your car off for you. So it had to have been a female who knew the name and how to spell it. Because remember, this is an interestingly spelled name. They had to have spelled it and known the hotel room, meaning it's probably likely that she was actually there the night of the shooting. Now, she said she was in the Philippines, and we said she was in the Philippines. Yet how do you have this valet receipt that was done the night of the day of the shooting that has her name, that had to have been someone that looks the part, can talk the role, and knows the data? Very, very questionable stuff.
Very much
and
so.
The very last thing we have is, apparently they said that the Las Vegas shooter, Mr. Stephen Paddock, had child porn on his computer.
Yeah. I don't feel surprised, really.
His brother did.
Yeah.
Not the comped sushi brother, the other brother that they found out about. So they found it. It was like the sheriff's department, Sheriff Joe Lombardo, in his first press conference since October 13, 2017, released an 81-page preliminary investigative report on the shooting that said that has new photographs of the hotel suite and online searches that he conducted before the attack, such as SWAT tactics and other potential public venue targets. And part of that was looking at child porn as well. So they said that in terms of the videos and stuff from the casinos that we want released, they said they have 2,000 different leads right now. They've already looked at over 21,560 hours of video. So as much as we like to think this whole, why aren't these videos being released? What is going on here? They're actually investigating it the way that they should be investigating it. They're just not releasing anything publicly, okay? So granted, that seems really bad, and we're kept in the dark on almost all of it. The investigation is going on. Don't worry about it. It is fine.
Yeah. Do you want to go on to some flu stuff now?
Yeah, go right ahead.
So I'm just going to read a bit out of this article from Bloomberg on the flu. But we all know the flu's been going around. I've been coughing some through this podcast.
I was sick last week.
You were very sick last week. I was worse about 2 weeks ago. But the influenza virus that sickened millions of Americans this season is already the most widespread outbreak since public health authorities began keeping track more than a dozen years ago. Now, with the threat of more strains emerging, it might get even worse. Quote, Flu is everywhere in the U.S. right now, said Dan Jerrigan, director of the Influenza Division at the National Center for Immunization and Respiratory Diseases. Quote, "This is the first year we have had the entire continental U.S. be the same color on the graph, meaning there is widespread activity in all of the continental U.S. at this point. The most optimistic assumptions among government experts is that the season peaked a few weeks ago, marking the apex of what was already an early and severe outbreak. However, such an outlook requires observers to ignore that outpatient doctor visits have continued to decline in the first weeks of 2018, yielding the most flu cases ever for this time of the year. Let me just do a couple more paragraphs. Even if this hopeful assessment by the U.S. Center for Disease Control and Prevention bears out, there will still be an additional 11 to 13 weeks of flu circulating across the country. Quote, in general, we see things peaking right now, but that means there is still a whole lot more flu to go. In addition, there are other strains of influenza still to show up that could be a major cause of disease."
Yeah, so flu's getting really, really bad. Have you looked at the death toll so far?
No.
I heard, now, I'm actually going to do a quick live Google search here. Flu deaths 2017, 2018. I heard that it was up to 750. Now,
750.
750 deaths. However, that is incorrect because it looks like it's right now only about 20 to 30. However, that only goes through January 13th, and it's over the last week or so when it's gotten really, really bad. But anyways, they said it's, earlier when you were talking, you were reading that off, it said that the entire map is the same color. They've got a map here, and this is on Bloomberg, that was released from the CDC. They've got a map of the U.S., and they got different colors that indicate what the states are. The color brown that they have indicates widespread influenza activity compared to, like, orange would just be regional, white is no activity and stuff like that. Well, every single state except for Hawaii and D.C. has widespread, and D.C. counts as local activity, so that's probably about as widespread as you're going to get in that district.
And then Hawaii has regional level of spreading. So everywhere in the continental U.S. has widespread influenza activity. So this is, as they said, the first time that this has ever happened to them in their entire dozen years that they've been doing this.
Now, remember when I was reading the death tolls. Now, like I said, the death toll number I saw was 750. I don't know where I saw that. It might have been fake news. We're gonna eventually know. But they said that in 2014 to 15, so like that winter, 148 deaths because of the flu. 2015, 16, 92 deaths. 2016, 17, 110 deaths. So you can already see that, we get about 100 to 150 deaths every year due to the flu. So that 750 number that I said, it seems really, really high, but we haven't reached that type of number, like, really ever. But this particular flu season is much, much worse than the others, so I wouldn't be surprised if it ends up being 300-400 people. Yeah. Or 750, like the thing I read said that. I don't know where I found it, so if you can find it, please send us an email, trumppublicradio@gmail.com, or follow us on Twitter, DJ2Radio, or gab.ai at Trump_Republic_radio. Please send us where the actual statistics you find are.
Yeah. So yeah, the flu is really bad. Do you want to go into some current year college craziness now?
Let's go ahead and let's do it.
The racist, sexist, homophobic, xenophobic.
You're fucking a white male!
The assumption that women are naturally better caregivers is part of patriarchy.
Die, cis, scum.
You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us! You will not divide us!
It's time for some current year college craziness.
Current year college craziness, a segment of the show where we talk about the crazy stuff happening on college campuses here and abroad, but predominantly here because we got the craziest colleges here in the United States, and we document what happens on those campuses every single week.
Yes, sir.
And this week we are starting off at Georgetown.
So there is a Georgetown member of the board there. He is an advisory board member. Last Saturday, he got fired from the Georgetown board because of a tweet he had. This is Jeff Bernstein. He says, "Wishing you," and this was in response to Conservative Millennial, the Twitter account. He says, "Wishing you a Me Too moment. Maybe then you won't be so insensitive." So this is a guy who's on the board of, the advisory board there of Georgetown University, which is like the leading law school in the country besides like Harvard, Georgetown Law is in Washington, D.C. It's where Tiffany Trump is going right now. But the guy that's on the board there just literally wished someone a Me Too moment, hoping, oh yeah, by the way, I hope you get in trouble for sexual assault allegations come out against you. I hope so. Because maybe then you won't be so insensitive. But he got fired, so that's a good thing. And I want guys like this to get fired because they're terrible, crappy people.
Most definitely.
And so that's the first story that we got here in current year college craziness. That just goes to show you the type of people that are on your school boards of your colleges. So
they're Me Tooing it up.
They're Me Tooing it up, aren't they?
Yep. The next thing that we want to go into is out of UC Berkeley. 4 California residents recently sued the University of California, Berkeley, and the surrounding city for failing to protect them during the Milo Yiannopoulos riots last year, which were, I remember, very early in Trump's administration when these riots happened.
Yeah, that was the first major thing that happened last year.
According to the lawsuit filed on the behalf of plaintiffs by Freedom X Law Group, the University of California Police Department was, quote, responsible for creating and exposing the plaintiffs to the unlawful actions of an angry mob of violent anarchists, causing all 4 to sustain various injuries. Quote, by their failure to intervene or employ reasonable tactical methods to ensure the safety of the plaintiffs and the public, government actors conducted their official duties with deliberate indifference to the plaintiffs' safeties, permitting hordes of violent rioters to swarm the university campus in a violent rage, the lawsuit contends. Additionally, the suit claims that the UCPD violated its own crowd management policy by failing to remove disruptive attendees from the February 2017 riots, instead choosing to stand down in the face of violent protesters.
Now remember, this was not the Battle of Berkeley.
No.
The big one. That was really technically the second, or maybe it was the third. This was the first one.
This was when Milo was going to speak at UC Berkeley. It also, in the lawsuit also contains images of the injuries sustained by the plaintiffs, John Jennings, Katrina Redlsheimer, Trevor Hatch, and Donald Fletcher, with one showing Jennings lying unconscious on the ground and another where Redsheimer received treatment after being pepper sprayed. Another image shows Redsheimer and Hatch being pepper sprayed and hit multiple times with flagpoles. So they got some hard evidence in this case.
I mean, that was at the time where everyone was really starting to just live stream everything, take pictures of everything, take images of everything, just record everything, especially when you're going to these protests where there are Antifa and other people that are very, very violent. So it's important that if you are someone who plans on going to anything in the future, whether or not you expect there to be like a lot of Antifa resistance or anything like that, record everything, okay? Stream stuff on YouTube, stream stuff on Periscope. Just get your videos up, take pictures of everything. Obviously come prepared. Obviously come, wear some sort of protection, wear a helmet, wear a mask, wear something. But whatever you do, record everything and make sure that if people are committing illegal, terroristic, violent acts, assaulting people, you get it on video so we can use this in courts of law to go after the people that are, hitting people with flagpoles while they're unconscious or whatever.
Yeah. So let's move on now to Hampshire College. Hampshire College is offering a course this semester exploring how to respond to white supremacy in the age of Trump.
Yeah, in case you're wondering, Hampshire College is in Massachusetts, just in case you're wondering.
The course description for the class, quote, white supremacy and appropriate whiteness in the age of Trump.
It sounds like a class I would
That is a hell of a title. poses questions such as whether, in, quote, white supremacy is a permanent feature of modern society, and how to, quote, appropriately respond to its ideology and political power in the age of Trump. The description elaborates that the class will research and discuss the relationship between white supremacy and white privilege and explore how to build a human rights movement to counter the white supremacist movement in the U.S.
Fascinating. I wonder how many people are actually going to take that class. I bet it's fairly popular.
I don't know, because that usually, like, this is a private school, isn't it?
From what I looked at, it was. And you know, it's actually kind of interesting because the teacher or the professor that's going to teach it is named Loretta Ross, and last year she actually had some little controversy surrounding her because she claimed that abortion, like childbirth, can be a joyful experience when achieving reproductive justice through human rights. So she got in trouble last year for saying that abortion is going to be just as joyful as childbirth. She also, earlier this year, shared an article on Twitter with her own commentary, arguing that, quote, faculty trained to speak about systems of oppression should not be required to be neutral in the classroom.
As far as opinions are concerned.
She also, after the inauguration of Trump, tweeted an article saying, people regret voting for Trump. Oh, I mean white supremacy in a Cheeto-colored con man. So, you know, this is obviously a person who's just, like, whacked out and crazy and hates Trump, but I'm interested...
And white people.
And white people, yeah. You cannot forget that. So I'm actually really interested to see just what comes out of this class here.
I wonder what appropriate whiteness is. Is it like, I don't know, groveling?
I don't know.
Who knows?
How do you appropriate whiteness? You got to culturally appropriate whiteness.
No, appropriate whiteness.
Yes.
Like, appropriate levels of being white.
Yeah. Anyways.
Yeah. Let's close the current year college craziness, though, with a hate hoax.
Another hate hoax.
And this is a hate hoax that happened at the University of Maryland. Bobby, would you like to go into it?
Yeah, so apparently they said that last fall at the University of Maryland, they found some racially charged graffiti, including a swastika that was found in a men's bathroom at the University of Maryland.
Wow, swastikas. Scary.
Very scary. The case is now solved, Enzo.
It is.
The perpetrator was Terrell DeMonte Alexander, 18 years old, former university employee. They said that he is black, which suggests that the incident was, in fact, a hoax.
So he wasn't a neo-Nazi KKK
he was
white
not
supremacist.
a neo-Nazi KKK white supremacist.
He was
a black guy
18-year-old black employee.
who worked there. Yes. Now, this isn't the first time that there has been a deceptive hate crime hoax at the University of Maryland. Last October, Ronald Alford, a 52-year-old black former employee, was also got in trouble for spray painting a swastika on campus. So you have a little history on your campus of your black employees spray painting swastikas to try to say, oh my God, there's the Nazis, the KKK, the white supremacists all over the place. Oh my God, help us. When in fact it's just them being like, how can I make my enemies look bad?
How can I attain racial grievances for what I found for my racial group? A hate hoax. And we see this all the time.
Yeah. Almost every single time you have a hate crime, it seems like it's come out to be... I mean, has anyone found an actual hate crime article on the internet that didn't turn out to be a hoax? That's a legitimate question I have. Has anyone found any? Maybe like one or two? You can find 30 with a click that are hoaxes.
For every real one that there is, there
5
seems
or 6,
to be
maybe
5,
10.
6, maybe 10 fake ones. We've seen hundreds of hoaxes.
We've covered many of them on the show.
Yeah, we've
both
probably...
in current year college craziness and in like other news.
If you go through current year college craziness through the breadth of we've been doing the show, which is about 10 months now, we've probably at least talked about 100.
At least. Easy.
So, yeah, another one. Do you want to go now into some international news, Bob?
Yeah, let's go ahead and let's do it.
Okay, so we're going to start out, we got a lot of international news this week. We're going to start out with Europe. So the first thing that you wanted to go into was some stuff that they're doing out there in Swedenistan.
So out there in Swedenistan, they are giving every single household a guide on how to handle terrorist attacks. It's called If War Comes. It was a booklet that they first published in the 1940s, right before World War II. Well, they said that that one was called Tips for Citizens on what they should do if Sweden was invaded. They now have an updated version that they've made to prepare for terrorist attacks, natural disasters, and war, all on the Swedish homeland. They said that the book is part of the government's plans to revive civil defense, meaning the whole community and not just the armed forces should be prepared for any attacks. Now, this comes after a string of explosions, grenade attacks, and terrorist incidences in the country. During the month of December 2017 alone, there was something like 30 explosions that happened in that country, all due to migrants setting off bombs and grenade attacks and stuff like that. So it's getting really, really bad. Anyways, they said, and this was the Swedish Civil Protection and Preparedness Agency spokeswoman Christina Andersson is saying, there are a number of concepts linked to warfare and military attacks that we have not communicated to people for many years. It is a challenge. So that's something they're actively trying to do, is let their citizens know, oh, by the way, just in case there's a war that happens, just in case there are grenade attacks and explosions that happen in our country, just in case those things happen, you should be prepared to deal with the situation. You know, I have another answer. How about prevent the freaking thing from happening even in the first place by deporting the people that you even bring in this stuff to your shores?
Yeah.
It's insane.
Very bad stuff.
But, you know, there is some good news about Sweden, and that's, I'm sorry, not Sweden, Switzerland.
Yes, we have some good news out of Switzerland. Essentially, maybe a Swexit. Sweden's top party has initiated a referendum to close its borders and sever its ties with the EU. The Swiss People's Party, SVP, a nationalist populist faction that currently holds the most seats in Switzerland's Federal Assembly, has initiated a referendum which they must garner 100,000 signatures by July 16th, 2019, which will allow them to have a vote to end the freedom of movement agreements, the Schengen zone, what they have in agreement with the EU, and sever their ties with the European Union. Now, Switzerland is not part of the EU, but it does have free movement Schengen agreements for the EU.
Right.
So by voting for this referendum, which they'll probably get, the signatures they need, they will be able to reinsert control over their own borders again.
Good. That's actually really good news.
Do you want to hear some of the arguments that the party has proposed for why they want this?
I would love to hear the arguments, Enzo.
So I will give you two. Quote, a free and self-determined country like Switzerland has to control immigration itself, as most of the successful countries in the world do. It would never occur to them to grant over 500 million citizens of other states a legal right to immigration. Rather, many countries tighten their immigration laws against the background of global political developments with the aim of aligning immigration strictly with their economic needs, their security, and the country's potential. And the other is, since the introduction of the free movement of peoples with the EU, we no longer determine who is allowed to come to Switzerland and who does not. This must be over. The limitation initiative requires that immigration be regulated and controlled independently by Switzerland. So, pretty much everything that we'd want a country to do, and they're sticking up to the EU. Like we said, they're not part of the European Union, but they're in the same free movement agreement, the Schengen zone.
Yeah.
The next thing that we have as far as Europe is concerned is there was a survey in Belgium in regards to whether individuals see Islam is intolerant and incompatible with Belgian society. They asked 4,734 different people. And the results are pretty staggering. 71% have said that Islam is intolerant and incompatible with Belgian society. So, as Belgium, being one of the core nations of the EU, is being flooded with these migrants that no one asked for, the people are still strongly against all this immigration into their country, and they see it as a existential threat.
Yeah, so I think that's something that seems surprising to me that it's that low of a number. 71% say it's incompatible with their society. 74% say it's an intolerable religion, or I'm sorry, it's an intolerant religion. which, like you said, compared to 38% for Judaism, 14% for Catholicism, it's pretty obvious the people there don't like what's going on there. And if you're not surprised, there might be a Belgian exit of the EU as well. What would that be? Belexit? Dexit? Whatever it is. Blexit? Whichever it is. Oh, by the way, breaking news. Patriots beat the Jaguars. They're going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, wow. The Jaguars are ahead most of the game.
Yeah.
Let's go on to the last thing that we have for Europe, and this is out of the Ukraine. The newly adopted Ukrainian law on restoring sovereignty over Donetsk and Lugansk regions shows that Kiev is determined to resolve the conflict in eastern Ukraine by force, the Russian Foreign Ministry said. Quote, the law grants Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko, quote, unlimited powers to silence dissent similar to those of a dictator, the Russian Foreign Ministry said. Quote, it cannot be described otherwise than a preparation for a new war. So there is a new law that has passed in Ukraine in regards to restoring sovereignty over the breakaway People's Republics of Lugansk and Donetsk in eastern Ukraine, which are like de facto pro-Russian separatist states. Mm-hmm. The majority of the people do not want to be part of the Ukraine there. And President Petro Poroshenko looks like they're going to start the civil war back up over there with his new actions. So the fighting in the Ukraine should look to pick up pretty soon.
Not good for those Ukrainians over there.
No.
I don't really know what I have to say about that personally.
Personally, I know a lot about the conflict that's happening in Ukraine. It's been really bad. The economic opportunities for people in Ukraine are very bad across the board. Most people don't have trust in the Ukrainian government whatsoever. There's a long history of corruption at all levels. And, I think what they're doing is going to be really bad because the people in eastern Ukraine don't like the government in Kiev. Mm-mm. So, let's go now on to some stuff out of Asia. The first thing that you have there is what the U.S. State Department is telling Americans traveling to North Korea.
Yes, so the State Department says, quote, are you going to North Korea? Are you traveling to North Korea? By the way, that might be a death wish. Why? Because they said, if you're going to North Korea, you make sure that you better draft a will and make funeral plans. They're not mincing words here. So, yeah, you have a big possibility of not returning if you try to actually visit North Korea. Number one, you'd be a dumbass if you are. So I don't know why any U.S. citizens are trying to travel to North Korea. But hey, they said, hey, if that does, I actually have the exact quote here. So it says, draft a will and designate appropriate insurance beneficiaries and or power of attorney. Discuss a plan with loved ones regarding care/custody of children, pets, property, belongings, non-liquid assets, funeral wishes, etc. They said that you also urge people to have a contingency plan for any emergency situations. So yeah, that's what the State Department was telling people that they need to do just in case they go to visit North Korea. So yeah, who wants to go to North Korea? Let's get our funeral plans ready.
Yeah. We also got the other thing that we have for news as far as Asia is concerned is also in regards to North Korea and South Korea, and that is South Korea and North Korea have agreed to create a joint Olympic team for and they're going to march together in the opening ceremony of the next Winter Olympics, which is in South Korea, and which is only a couple weeks from now, Bobby.
It starts February 8th.
February 8th.
So that's less than 2 weeks, maybe just over 2 weeks from now.
Yeah, the two countries met for the second time in a week Monday to discuss the possibility of creating a joint ice hockey team for the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea. The nations also agreed to create a joint North and South Korean women's ice hockey team for the Olympics in South Korea. This will be the first unified team for the two countries since they joined together for an international table tennis championship and a youth soccer match in 1991. North and South Korea have never marched together under one flag in any Olympic Games.
That's great. The only question is, what flag are they going to use?
It is a joint unification flag.
Do they have a
It is a unified, yeah, they do have photos of it. It is a unified South Korean flag.
Nice. I'm excited about it.
Yeah, and I'm I'm glad this is happening because the tensions have been bad for a while. But I mean, if they're willing to work together to, have success in the Olympic Games happening in South Korea, I mean, the best to them.
And we haven't really mentioned this in the show today, but if you look back at some of the news that's come out of North Korea, there actually have been a lot of joint talks going on the last week or so. They've met several times, the North Korean and South Korean leadership in that building on the border that's got the border that runs right through the middle of the table. We've all seen the pictures of it. They've had their meetings there for the first time in like decades now. So, for all those people that think, oh, Trump's rhetoric is bringing us closer to war. Well, Trump's rhetoric is also making people realize, wait a minute, we don't want war. What we want is peace. Maybe we should actually be sitting down at the table. By the way, there's the Olympics happening 50 to 100 miles away from that border in a very tense situation like we're dealing with right now in North Korea. It's no wonder that the two things combined is the reason why we're seeing peace talks. There's a reason why we're seeing them combined together under one flag. If there hadn't been an escalation, if I can use air quotes around that word, if there hadn't been those, we wouldn't be seeing peace talks. We probably wouldn't be seeing war.
Yeah.
But we definitely wouldn't be seeing this.
And as we said last week, President Moon of South Korea accredits Donald Trump for the peace talk negotiations.
Exactly.
So it's his efforts that have gotten them to come together.
Would we have seen the same thing under President Hillary Clinton? I doubt it.
But it's not what we saw under Barack Obama.
Right.
So if Clinton was anything like Obama, no, nothing would happen.
No.
Let's move on now to Africa, particularly South Africa, since has a near and dear place in our hearts, and we have a lot of South African listeners. The first thing that we want to talk about is H&M has closed all their stores in South Africa. The fashion retailer H&M was forced to close its stores in South Africa over the weekend after a group of, quote, anti-racism demonstrators protested through the outlets, toppling mannequins, overturning clothing racks, and leaving a wave of destruction in their wake. This was in reaction to, did you see, Bobby, there was an ad showing a black child dressed in a shirt that read, coolest monkey in the jungle.
I did. It was hilarious.
Yeah.
And
so,
I actually have something to say about that. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. You probably are going to say the same thing, but I'll just go ahead and say it. That kid and his family have both said they don't see what the big problem of the uproar about that picture was. You know
Yeah.
why? Because the kid was a kid model. They had over like 100 or something different shirts that they were taking modeling pictures of that day. It was literally, change your shirt, let's take some more pictures. Change your shirt, let's take some more pictures. That's how they get these modeling photos that you see.
he got paid to do it.
Yeah, he got paid to do it. They didn't see the big problem. They thought it was funny, okay? We're such a politically incorrect culture, or, a politically correct culture, I'm sorry, that we are right now, that you see something that says, coolest monkey in the jungle, and you automatically think, oh my God, that's racist because there's a black kid wearing it.
But yeah, it received a lot of backlash in social media over, the alleged racial implications of the photo. H&M apologized, but the apology was not enough for some people, however. And starting last Saturday, members of the Economic Freedom Fighters, a South African political party, which we've talked about with many people.
Yeah.
We've talked about them with Simon Roach, Karen Smith. I talked about it with Leigh Oxley. These guys are very bad. So the Economic Freedom Fighters, South African political party, gathered to protest outside the H&M stores across the country, and quickly the protests went out of rails, and they have videos of this. The Freedom Fighters just go into the stores and start destroying everything.
It's amazing.
And
it's terrible, but it's amazing.
It's terrible. And the leaders of the Economic Freedom Fighters movement said that they make no apology for what their fighters did to H&M and suggest that targeting H&M retail stores was just the beginning.
Mm-hmm.
So more to come.
Yeah, a lot more to come. Did you see, before we move on, I saw a video, it came out, I believe it was this morning, that there was a bunch of actual members of the ANC, African National Congress there, in South Africa. They went outside because there was a protest happening, and there was a single old white dude that was standing there amongst the protesters, and the actual ANC members started picking up rocks and trash on the ground and throwing it at him. Not throwing it at any other protesters, just the white dude that happened to be there at the protest. And that's the only one they attacked, because he's the only white guy there. It's getting bad, folks. It's getting bad.
Stuff. Very bad
But
stuff.
we can move on to the next story.
Yes, let's move on. So the next story that we have here is also South Africa, and that is South Africa's state electricity supplier is on the verge of collapse. So South Africa's finance minister Malusi Gigaba warned this week that if the crisis-facing state-owned electricity supplier, the Electricity Supply Commission, known as Eskom, is not dealt with urgently, South Africa's whole economy could collapse before the end of January. And as we've talked on the program many times before, they're already in their past junk status for their interest ratings.
Yeah.
So the economy is already in terrible straits. But according to reports in the South African media, Gigaba said at a pre-World Economic Forum breakfast meeting in Johannesburg that the state, quote, simply does not have the funds to bail out Eskom, and the utility could collapse before the South African team at the WEF in Davos returns once the conference ends on January 26. There would be no currency and no economy for the country if Eskom went belly up, Gigaba warned, adding that the crisis is extremely serious.
Well, that would give them all excuses to do what they want to do.
So, yeah, we've talked about the potential of civil war, or, the inevitability of civil war in South Africa. I mean, our friends see it as an inevitable fact. And I think when the power grid goes out with Eskom, which is supposed to happen towards the end of this month, yeah, complete civil war might break out. We just saw with these H&Ms, the economic freedom fighters said it's just the beginning.
Yeah.
And they're willing to break more stuff and attack, more white farmers. They don't care. It's time to take back all land from white people in South Africa for these people.
And they're going to use this as their excuse. They're going to say, we don't have our electricity, we're taking your stuff. They're going to blame them for it.
Yeah, they very much might just blame whites for the power going out. So, who knows? Bad stuff. Very, very bad stuff. Let's go now on to the stuff that we have in regards to the Middle East. The first thing that I wanted to talk about is Israel has unveiled details for a new underground wall along the Gaza Strip. We talk about there's the underground components for the wall. This is something that is actually already being worked on, and as we said before, Israel's walls work very well. So, the Israeli army on Thursday revealed details of a massive underground barrier being built along the border with the Gaza Strip in a bid to neutralize the threat of Palestinian attack tunnels. Eventually stretching some 41 miles, the concrete wall will be accompanied by motion sensors designed to detect tunnels digging and is expected to be completed by mid-2019. The project was previously announced, but the details of its construction had been kept secret until Thursday when journalists found out. So, we're not the only country that is actually dealing with these things. This is a specialty companies offer dealing with protecting, against tunneling under walls.
Yeah.
And it's something that already happens in the world. Israel is working on it right now. And it's what we want for our walls because it's proven to work. It's been proven to work in Israel, and it's going to work here in the United States.
And, it's good because part of building the wall in America is making sure that every single wall goes at least 6 feet underground to prevent, shallow digging.
Along with sensing.
Along with
for
underground
tunnels.
sensing for any tunnels that go below 6 feet down there. So it's not like... it's not like it's just the 6 feet underground and you leave it there. No, we're actively looking at this thing, trying to prevent tunnels from digging and going under it. Because if you have the tunnel digging the sensors there, you can figure out exactly where they're building a tunnel, probably how deep they are. You can catch them in the process.
Yeah. So, I don't know, good stuff on Israel there. I want now to get into some stuff happening in Syria because the stuff happening in Syria is really big. So the first thing I want to talk about is what the Syrian regime itself has said, Bashar al-Assad's government. The Syrian regime army has vowed to drive out the U.S. from the country, the state media has reported. The Syrian army is determined to drive out the U.S. from any involvement in the country, the state television reported on Monday. Bashar al-Assad's army objects to any form of U.S. presence in the country and will seek to put an end to it Reuters reported, citing state media. The U.S.-led coalition is currently training Syrian militias and plans to establish a new border force together with Syrian Kurdish-led opposition fighters consisting of 30,000 personnel over the next several years, according to the coalition. The move has been criticized by the Syrian Foreign Ministry, branding it a blatant assault on the country's sovereignty, according to the state media. So the regime has vowed to take out the U.S. involvement in Syria, and they want to get rid of this new border force that it's creating.
Yeah.
Now, Tillerson has come out and said this week that we have a long-term troop deployment and support for regime change in Syria. So the U.S. foreign policy is sticking by what they're doing there, and they're working with the Kurds. Now, the big thing that's happening right now is, and it's happening right as we're talking, doing this Sunday show, is our ally, Turkey, is currently invading northern Syria near, I believe it's Adrif. It's Afrin in northern Syria. They are currently airstriking, and tanks are currently going in supporting the Free Syrian Army, which is a regime opposition army, attacking the Kurdish-held Afrin region of northern Syria, which the United States is working along with currently, and a lot of the weapons for the YPG out there were given to by the U.S. government. So, Turkey, this is under their Operation Olive Branch they launched Saturday. They consider the YPG to be a terrorist organization and a terrorist army that supports the PKK, which is a outlawed political movement for Kurds in Turkey. We've talked many times in the show, the fighting between Kurds and Turks. And this is really going to be bad for U.S.-Turkish relations, because they're killing the people that we are training at the moment.
Yeah.
In open combat right now. I mean, during the course of the show, I was just looking at reports. The Kurds have already taken out 12 different tanks in the assault. So, the Kurdish fighters in the YPG, they're militias that have trained fighting against ISIS and Syrian rebel forces and Syrian government forces for the breadth of the civil war. They're very hardened troops, but at the same time, the Turkish troops are very, very well armed, and their air force capabilities and the strikes that they're able to do with drones and conventional artillery, it's doing a lot of damage to the region. The Turkish military says their air force has already destroyed 108 targets in the region, and this is a report I'm reading off of yesterday. So violence is really kicked up in Syria right now, when we thought it was kind of in a downward lull.
And it seems like, I don't know. We are allies with Turkey. We are also arming the Kurdish rebels.
Yes.
So it's essentially like our people fighting our people at this point.
Yeah.
And Tillerson says we're going to stay involved. I don't want us to be involved.
No, I don't.
I want, as much as I don't like the fact that the Free Syrian Army is attacking the Kurds, attacking the Kurds, the Syrians are still saying, yeah, we don't want the U.S. to get involved. As much as I don't want the Kurds to get attacked, as much as I don't really like Turkey at all, this is their problem to deal with, not ours. So I don't want us to get involved. I don't want us to be
Tillerson's out here saying that we support regime change. So there's going to be continued conflict in Syria. And I just want it to stop, okay? I just want the civil war to be over.
Yeah.
It's not worth our lives, our investment, and it's bad for our foreign policy, the way that we're entangling ourselves with all these competing client groups in Syria. Syria doesn't matter to me. Let Bashar al-Assad take it over.
Yeah,
it's
precisely.
his nation.
Precisely.
You want to go now to the last thing that we have for the Middle East and what happened out in Kabul?
Yeah, so out in Kabul, at Kabul's in Kabul's Intercontinental Hotel, they were attacked by gunmen earlier today. This is actually a popular hotel for Westerners that are in the area. It's been the target of several terrorist attacks in the past. They said back, I believe it was in 2011, there was a bomb that went off and some Taliban people shot up the hotel as well. So this isn't the first time that people have attacked this hotel. They said that so far there's more than 40 people that have been killed in this attack. And they said that the people who attacked it just started shooting at staff members and shooting at guests. The building itself caught on fire. And they said it started around 9 p.m. So a lot of people are probably, back in the hotel at the time that they did it. So far, a bunch of people gone to the hospital, but yeah, it's getting bad, dude. It's getting really bad out there. And I've got an updated article here that said it was 6 heavily armed assailants. They pinned down security forces for more than 13 hours before the last attacker was finally killed, which allowed guests to flee the building while the thing was still on fire. So 13 hours of siege, of keeping people hostage, of shooting at people before all the assailants were finally killed. So
it's crazy.
Yeah, that took a really, really long time. They said that so far it's 6 other people, including 3 security forces, were reported wounded. More than 150 people, including 41 foreigners, were rescued from the hotel once all the enemies were killed. At least 11 of those people that were killed, and this is talking on the I think this is the good side. They said at least 11 people that were killed were employees of Cam Air, which is a private Afghanistan airline. At a news conference, the Cam Air put out a statement saying that most of its flights will be disrupted because of the attack. 6 of those killed were Ukrainians that were working with Afghan law enforcement agencies. A single citizen from Kazakhstan was killed. Most of them were Afghanis, but I guess all I can really say is it's bad. So apparently they said that what they were shouting was, "Don't leave any of them alive, good or bad. Shoot and kill them all." That's what one of the guests heard the assailants screaming at each other during the attack. So they said that they were shooting at people who were having dinner in the restaurants before breaking into guest rooms. Eventually a fire broke out. They heard more explosions, and live TV footage showed people trying to escape the windows of the upper stories by literally climbing down, like jumping from balcony to balcony on their way down. They said some people were able to escape. Not many people were. A few people did fall, apparently, which is not good. But, the entire building, like a large section of it caught on fire. I mean, that's really all I can say. It started, however, with the shooting at people in the restaurant, as well as 5 gunmen who had suicide vests that waited until people stormed it before they started blowing themselves up. That's what killed a bunch of the security forces that were trying to stop them. So they were prepared for that attack, and it's probably one of the worst coordinated attacks we've seen in a while. Yeah.
Bad stuff.
Very bad stuff.
Let's go now to the last story we have for international news and the last story of the show. We're going to North America for this one, and it's quite humorous, to say the least, Bob.
Yeah, I heard this story earlier today, and I was like, wow, this is funny.
I've known about this for a couple days now. So El Salvador is currently negotiating with Qatar to potentially send the TPS, temporary protected status, individuals that were ending their status for here in the United States.
It's about 200,000 people.
It's about 200,000 Salvadorians who just lost their TPS status in the United States. El Salvador is looking to negotiate to send them to Qatar. So let me read some of this. El Salvador is seeking to reach an agreement with Qatar to allow Salvadoran migrants who are forced to leave the U.S. to work temporarily in the Gulf country, a spokesman for the Salvadoran presidency said on Tuesday. This is in regards to Trump ending TPS for the Salvadorans. Presidential Communications Chief Eunicio Chica said El Salvador was in talks to see how Salvadorans could be employed in Qatar. Quote, "The Kingdom of Qatar has held out the possibility of an agreement with El Salvador whereby Salvadorian workers could be brought across in phases to Qatar," Chicas told reporters. After an unspecified period, the Salvadorians would return home, Chicas added, without saying how many workers the program would encompass. Hugo Martinez, the Salvadoran foreign minister, said during a visit to Qatar that his country had very, very skilled workers to offer the Gulf nation.
So they don't want their own people coming home.
No.
why wouldn't they want their own people coming home?
I don't know. The way that they say it on the media, like these are ultra economy boosters.
Yeah, they're
pretty much giving away trillions of dollars to Qatar.
I was gonna say they say that every single one of them adds to the U.S. GDP.
Yeah.
Well, don't you think El Salvador would want their GDP?
Every
to go
one
up?
of them makes money rain from the sky.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Why doesn't El Salvador want?
Yeah.
These people?
So why send them to Qatar where they could be second-class citizens, essentially slave labor? I mean, I'm sure living in Qatar is probably better than living in El Salvador. Don't get me wrong. So hey, for those people, it might actually be a step up. But
no, Qatar is definitely a much more stable country than El Salvador.
Yeah.
And its GDP is much higher. I mean, it's not a democratic society whatsoever.
No,
and
like
it's definitely
I said,
nothing like El Salvador. But hey, it's still better than El Salvador.
Not as good as the U.S., but you're right. Definitely better than El Salvador. So yeah, that is kind of funny that they're like, we don't want to bring him here. Let's ship him halfway across the world.
And it's because the president doesn't want those people there because he knows they're like the lower dregs of society.
Precisely.
Like they would be a drain on his country to take care of.
And
Qatar. Figure out how to send them to Qatar.
I was gonna say Qatar. I hate to say it, they'll probably end up being used as like slave labor, pretty much.
We don't know what they'll.
We don't know, but
who knows?
it's not like they're gonna automatically all be promoted to CEOs. So
yeah, so funny stuff there. Salvadorans going to Qatar, likely, well, potentially. So yeah, that's the show for the week. Man, we went through a lot of stuff this week, Bobby.
I'm surprised that we finished in only about 2.5 hours. I thought this was gonna go long.
It's how we always aim for that timeline.
Yeah.
So we just kind of do it somehow. But yeah, I've had a pretty good show going through it, and like I said, we got through a lot of stuff, so I feel good. Anything that you want to say to the audience before we go? Any sort of announcements we have?
Yes, I will. So as we said, you can follow us on Twitter at DJT Radio. The link is in the description. On Gab.ai at Trump_Republic_radio. Link is also in the description. Like us on Facebook at Facebook.com/TrumpRepublicRadio. Link is in the description. If you want to email us directly, you can email us at TrumpRepublicRadio@gmail.com. That link is also in the description. And if you want to support the show and you like what we do have a PayPal donation link. It's paypal.me/TrumpRepublicRadio, which also is in the description.
Yes.
So anything you need in the description, feel free to contact us. We would love to hear what you got to say. Let us know what you think of the studio. We've been doing it for a couple weeks now. We've now got this dual camera set up, so I think it looks a lot better. Let us know what you think. Remember, we also have our YouTube account. Be sure to like and subscribe for more. On YouTube, if you're listening to this, on YouTube, the file size of these videos is too large to upload to YouTube, so we're working on that. However, the actual podcast itself will continue to be released on YouTube like normal. So if you're listening on YouTube, we would love for you to watch us live on YouTube. It's every Sunday afternoon. The time has been kind of flipping around, and
it's been last week it was 2, this week is 3. Next week we can't start at 3 because the Royal Rumbles.
Yeah, we like
Sunday
WWE.
night, so.
Also, February 4th is going to be the Super Bowl, and as much as we like the boycotts of the NFL, I'm not going to miss that.
I'm interested in seeing what
the New England Patriots are going to be in it. Again, they just beat the Jacksonville Jaguars as we were recording this, and the Minnesota versus Philadelphia game is yet to start, so it'll be fun to see who's going to be playing against Tom Brady in the Super Bowl this year. We're going to find out. So
I hope it's not Minnesota. I hate that place. As a Wisconsinite.
I went to the dentist this week, and my dentist was from Minneapolis, and she's a huge Vikings fan, so that gave me something to talk about while she was like...
My mom lived in Minneapolis for a while. I've spent a lot of time in Minneapolis. Not a fan of Minnesota.
I've been to Minneapolis one time.
Sorry, Minnesota listeners, but I'm just saying.
Went to the Mall of America. It was awesome. My mom got lost. It was a funny story.
I've been there many times. Anyways, we're sidetracked, but... Again, thank you for listening to Trump Public Radio, and have a good one.
Goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye.